winner, Hamlet, J. Arthur Rank, 2 cities film.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Picture This 1948. We're going all the way back to the 40s to talk about some surprisingly spooky movies. Chad and I weren't intending for this to be a Halloween inspired episode by any means, even though this is coming out in October. We had a different slate plan, but then because of the cruise, it just didn't make sense because that was a 10 film slate. So we're like, well, you know what, let's do this one. There is a ghost in the Best Picture winner, but we didn't realize that a few other films, not just the Best Picture winner, would have other, not necessarily like spooky, iconic images necessarily, but some darker themes, more thriller-esque. Even the one that I thought was the one that wasn't, also has some darkness that we'll talk about. So all 5 of them, I think, could be forced into the mold of spooky season watching, even if it's not a one-on-one comparison. But Chad, how you doing, my spooky king? How you doing today on this fabulous Monday morning that we're recording this for 1948? How you doing, Chad?
I'm doing great. This is I did not expect. You go into these slates not necessarily knowing about most of the movies, and then you end up sometimes finding out maybe it's not that great, or maybe it's okay. Or then sometimes this one, you find out that this might actually be one of the best slates. I feel like there's not really. Not only is there not a bad movie in this slate, but there's not something that you think about each one of these could be a number one, I think.
Yeah, I think you said that perfectly, because the slate, which I'll get to right now, Hamlet, Johnny Belinda, The Red Shoes, The Snake Pit, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. We'll talk about all 5 of them, but all 5 of these movies, exactly like you said, each one of these was my number 5. Each one of these was my number 1 at some point. I really do think it's so evenly matched to where, I think if you ask most people, there's 1 or 2 movies that I think is the definitive number 1 for a lot of people. But also you got to look at what our interests are and what we're interested in. And, me being a Shakespeare nerd, us being fans of acting, and you being a fan of Coda, all these little things that I'm okay, maybe that's Chad's number 1. Maybe that's Chad's number 1. Maybe that's Chad's number 1. And for me too, maybe this is my favorite, because it's also what is the favorite? What is the best? What is the one you want to rewatch the most? And then looking at just the legacy as well, which are the ones that I think are the most important. And it really is hard, because I think all of these is important in some way, shape, or form then and now. And I think, number 5 today, no matter what my number 5 is a movie that I'm giving at least 3.5 stars to. There's nothing lower. That's my floor, and my ceiling is probably at 4 or 4.5 stars. None of these are the definitive number 1 5-star film that reigns above the rest. I think all of them are in that sweet spot where this is a really consistent slate, which I really, really like. Each movie I have criticisms for, but each movie I have so many praises for as well. So it's going to be a really, really fun discussion, because I don't know where you lie right now. I don't know where I even lie. Acting is a lot easier because I have my definitive 4 acting picks, but I really don't know which way I'm going to go for my ranking. We might have to do acting prizes first, honestly. Nah, we won't, but we'll stay to the format of our show. But as per the format of our show, before we get into the movies themselves, we like to talk about the year, things that happened, people that were born, people that died, and of course, some music that came out at the time. And then we'll get into the movies of 48 that didn't make the cut, because there are some big ones. If you thought this slate was stacked, there's a lot of big heavy hitters on the sidelines as well that didn't even get nominated. But Chad, if you are ready, we can talk about the 1948 history. Whenever you're ready, sir, take it away.
Absolutely. History of 1948. The constitutions of Italy and New Jersey both go into effect. And I wrote that down for a very obvious reason.
What Italian New Jerseyans do you know, Chad? Any that I can meet? Because oh wait, I am.
Yeah. Burma gains its independence from the United Kingdom. Mahatma Gandhi begins a fast unto death, protesting violence. But then he's assassinated. So not a very great end for a great man like Mahatma Gandhi there. NASCAR is founded. That's kind of cool. The U.S. Supreme Court rules that religious instruction in public schools is unconstitutional. Unconstitutional.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. I mean, The Hells Angels motorcycle gang is founded. The Children's Bargain Town, which would become Toys R Us, is founded in Washington, D.C., and
Very
now it's
cool.
apparently making a comeback.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting news for today.
Yeah.
The UN establishes the World Health Organization. The British Mandate of Palestine ends, allowing forces from Egypt, Transjordan, Syria, and Iraq to invade Israel, causing the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. As a harsh mispronunciation there,
That's good.
but I mean, we're still seeing conflicts like this today.
Oh yeah.
Chaim, I think, Wiseman is elected first president of Israel. Puma is founded,
Hmm.
clothing shoe brand. The first monkey astronaut, Albert the First, is launched into space.
Nice.
The National Health Service begins functioning, giving people of the United Kingdom universal health care. Wish we had that. Summer Olympics are held in London, and the first I Spy books are created. You remember
Wow.
those?
I remember those. Yes, I'm old enough to remember those. Do they still have those? Is that still like a thing or no?
I think so. I think
Yeah.
mostly in like dentist and doctor's offices.
All right. Well, there you go. So they still exist. I wasn't sure if that was like a bygone trend or era, but I guess it's been going back since the 40s. So yeah, it must have hung around for a while. It must still be
Yeah,
around, but very cool.
I assume so.
Yeah. Any other history, or are we getting into some births, deaths, albums?
Yep, we're going into the births now. We have someone who sadly passed away recently, Ozzy Osbourne. King Charles III, Samuel L. Jackson,
Wow.
Stevie Nicks, Alice Cooper, who I recently saw in concert, Olivia Newton-John, Ted Nugent, Steven Tyler, Kathy Bates, John Ritter, Rhea Perlman, Carl Weathers, Billy Crystal, speaking of Oscars, Phil Hartman, Donna Summer, Rick James, bitch, Jeremy Irons, Felicia Rashad, Diane Wiest, Robert Plant, Pam Ferris, Richard Riley, James Taylor, Terry Bradshaw, Jean Renault, Kenny Loggins, Lewis Black, Al Gore, George Wendt, George R.R. Martin,
Wow.
John Carpenter, Dee Wallace, and John Bonham.
Wow. Wait, so you're telling me Ozzy Osbourne and Steven Tyler were both born in the same year? There's something in the water there for sure.
Alice Cooper, too. Yeah.
Alice Cooper, yeah, man, something in the water for that. All right, what about some deaths? Do you have any for that year?
Yeah, just a few.
Okay.
A very, very big figure in Dylan and I's like sports, whatever, Babe Ruth.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay.
Died that year. Mahatma Gandhi, as mentioned earlier. Orville Wright, Zelda Fitzgerald, Hugo Boss, D.W. Griffith, and Edith Roosevelt.
Wow, yeah, some big names for sure. What about some albums, Chad? Any music coming out in the 40s? I mean, there obviously was, but any notable ones?
Yes, and none that I've heard, but I found 10 that seemed to be popular or seemed to be popular. Chansons des Cafés de Paris by Edith Piaf. Liberian Suites by Duke Ellington and his orchestra. Stravinsky Suite from Petrushka / Scenes de Ballet by Igor Stravinsky / the Philharmonic Symphony Orchestra of New York. Charlie Parker No. 1 by Charlie Parker. A presentation of progressive jazz by Stan Keaton and his orchestra. Rendezvous with Peggy Lee by Peggy Lee. Volume 3 by the King Cole Trio. Mendelssohn Concerto in E minor for violin and orchestra OP 64 by Bruno Walter, Nathan Wilstein, and the Philharmonic Symphony Orchestra of New York. A Monday Date at Blue Note by Art Hode's Hot 7. That's a cool band name. Stravinsky, The Firebird, new augmented version by Igor Stravinsky and the Philharmonic Symphony of New York.
Very cool. Yeah, I haven't heard any of those perfect. Like I haven't like gone out and listened to them. But the thing with like these albums from like the 40s and 50s, I feel like is like we've heard the music probably, we just didn't know where they came from or how
Right.
old they were. So I bet if you were to listen to some of those, you might hear some familiar tunes. But let's get into the movies. That's what you all came here to listen to. 1948. I didn't say this at the top of the show, but I have a cold, so pardon me. My voice will sound richer and cleaner next time. But I just had to talk about these movies with Chad because they're so good. But what movies did not make the cut on Oscar Day? The one big one that I think is like the most glaring one, but this has a little bit of an asterisk, is Bicycle Thieves. Bicycle Thieves came
Mm.
out this year, but wasn't qualifying for the Oscars till the year after because of American release dates. So like that's like one of those like border ones that like could have counted, could have not counted, but still a big film nonetheless. And it wasn't nominated the next year. So either way, the Academy snubbed it. But Chad, do you have any titles that you wanted to bring up first? That
Uh,
were notable films from 1948.
yeah, some notables I have are Three Godfathers. Apparently a big Christmas movie I still haven't
Oh,
seen.
cool.
Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Uh, Speaking of Shakespeare, there's a Macbeth adaptation.
Yes, Orson Welles Macbeth. Yeah.
And then also for Best Picture worthy, I put Rope.
Yeah, Rope, Hitchcock's Rope. I've never seen Rope. Is it
Haven't
good? Chad?
either.
Have you seen? Okay, well maybe we'll have to remedy that sometime soon. A
Yeah.
few other films I wrote down. I did also write the Orson Welles Macbeth. I just think it's surprising that Laurence Olivier gets in, but Orson Welles can't get his Shakespeare film in. Even though I would say nowadays Orson Welles' film is probably more talked about in the grand scheme of Shakespeare. Key Largo, which is another John Huston film starring Humphrey Bogart, came out this year, so they were just cranking them out that year. David Lean also did an adaptation of Oliver Twist that year, which was supposed to be really good. And then the big one that is not really a film, but pretty iconic for superheroes is the very first Superman serial film came out in 1948, which is huge. There was like a
Wow.
serial series, and that's kind of the first ever superhero film put to screen, basically. They were shorts, obviously, they were serials, but would kind of grow into something a lot bigger in the next few decades, into Batman, and then obviously into the 80s with Tim Burton's Batman, and then Superman, the movie in the 70s, and the rest is history. You know, we got DC, Marvel going on right now. James Gunn's revamping it. So all harkens back to 1948. But let's finally get to the Oscars themselves. What made it? What was snubbed? What was the upset? Because this is the year of the upset, and Hamlet was an upset. It wasn't even nominated for the Globes. It did win the BAFTA, but it is a British production, so BAFTA was only in its second year. So it's hard to say exactly if the BAFTA was a reliable precursor or not, but really the audience is, you know, the big race at the time was Johnny Belinda versus Treasure of Sierra Madre. Treasure of Sierra Madre obviously won director. Johnny Belinda was nominated for like 11 or 12 Oscars, so it got so many nominations. So everyone was like, those are the big two to watch, these big two American films. And then all of a sudden, this British film came in and beat it, Hamlet. And it was actually the first non-American film to win Best Picture. So this was a huge
Oh,
year. A lot of people said it was in protest, almost as kind of like a, you know, there was an attitude that, well, they're just going to keep awarding all these American movies. And everyone was like, well, hold my beer. We're going to prove you wrong. And we're going to vote for Olivier because Hamlet is great. But yeah, this was considered a huge upset because of that, because it had just never been commonplace. Kind of like how Parasite was essentially a huge upset in 2019, just because we had never seen an international language film win Best Picture at that time. So Parasite winning was this huge, you know, boundary breaker in the same way that Hamlet was too. It was this non-American film coming in, kind of playing in the American arena and winning. And a lot of people had controversy with that, but a lot of people were like, good, this shows that like the Academy's not biased. So it all ended up for the best, because years and years later, we have our president saying movies like Parasite shouldn't win Best Picture because they're not American films. But the Best Picture should be the Best Picture of the year. And I think that is why this is a notable year, even if you don't agree that Hamlet is the best picture. It's cool that the Academy was willing to give it to someone outside of their own
yeah.
country. This is also the first year that Best Costume Design was introduced, and it was split into color and black and white. Crazy that they didn't award costumes for 20 years before that. Otherwise, Wizard of Oz would probably have another Oscar. John Huston directed his father, Walter Huston, to an Academy Award for The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, which is so cool. That is a very unique accomplishment. And the Huston family won 3 Oscars that evening. So John won for Best Director and Screenplay, and then obviously his father won for Best Actor. And then years and years and years later, we would see Angelica Houston win an Oscar for Prizzi's Honor, which was another film that John Huston directed. It's just he directed his daughter to an Oscar. So he's the only guy ever to direct his father and his daughter to an acting Oscar, which is so, so cool. One of the greatest snubs ever, according to the newspapers of the time. Humphrey Bogart not getting nominated for Best Actor was considered the biggest snub of all time at the time. I don't know if that's still the case. We'll have to talk about it. Joan of Arc set the record by receiving 7 nominations without a nomination for Best Picture. And then Johnny Belinda set the record for the most Oscars lost in a night. It wins Best Actress, but gets nominated for 11 other Oscars that it loses. So it held the record. Then it tied it with Beckett, The Turning Point, which we've covered, The Color Purple, which we've covered, The Power of the Dog, which we've covered. Power of the Dog did win one as well, but went 1 for 12. And then most recently, last year, Amelia Perez went 2 for 13, lost 11 Oscars. So Johnny Belinda is in company with those movies. I would say of those movies, I think some are better than others. But yeah, movies that have lost 11 Oscars. No movie has ever lost 12. If Amelia Perez had gotten snubbed for supporting actress or song, we would have seen that take the record, which would have been pretty sweet. But yep, so no film has ever lost more than 11. So Johnny Belinda still holds that record to this day with those other films, though it did still win something because it was up for 12. But that is the Academy Award history for the 21st Academy Awards, which is really interesting history. I mean, a lot of groundbreaking stuff. But Chad, any thoughts on that before we get into the films? Obviously, we like to talk about the upset, but we should probably talk about it once we get to the movies themselves. But any thoughts before we head into Hamlet?
I mean, yeah, it's just a lot of interesting history there that I didn't know, that I just, love that you told me about, as well as the audience. And it's really cool. I mean, yeah, it's good to set like a precedent like that, because I mean, some of the best movies are not made in America, so right. it is what it is. We'll talk about Hamlet coming up soon, but it's cool that it at least open the doors for something, and that's not every year that you have something like that. So that's really cool.
I'm probably the first person to ever say this, but Laurence Olivier walked so Bong Joon-ho could run. Is kind of what we're getting at right here. But let's talk about that film, the one that upset it all. It is the first alphabetically that we're going to be talking about. So let's talk about it. Let's set the scene. Let's see that sun rise over the jungle. Let's lay back, say no worries, Hakuna Matata, and join our friends Simba, Timon, and Pumbaa for the Lion King. Oh, sorry, no, wrong version. Sorry. We're talking about Hamlet, the actual Hamlet. Sorry. I get those two versions confused sometimes. But Chad, tell us about Hamlet. That was my stupidest segue of all time.
I had to have my little Timon and Pumbaa fit. No, these
yes. I love it.
They belong to my son, and they are his favorite characters from that movie. Like, he loves those and Simba, but well, let's talk about the movie where they cut out Timon and Pumbaa. And we're talking about Hamlet, directed by Laurence Olivier, written by Laurence Olivier. Well, him and Shakespeare, right?
Yeah.
Cinematography by Desmond Dickinson. Music by William Walton. Starring Laurence Olivier, Basil Sidney, Eileen Hurley, Norman Woodland, Felix Almer, Terrence Morgan, Gene Simmons, John Laurie, Esmond Knight, Anthony Quayle, Christopher Lee, and Peter Cushing. Synopsis: a young prince is devastated by his father's murder and a parent mother's betrayal as he thinks about the meaning of life and getting revenge. Yes. Based on the 1599 play Hamlet by William Shakespeare.
There you go. So I haven't seen this version before in its entirety. Chad and I just jokingly talked about Lion King, and we'll talk about it in a sec too, because I just think it's so cool that, like, once you see Hamlet, you can actually really see the parallels. But what I want to know, because Chad and I have covered Shakespeare now, I think 4 times maybe. We obviously covered both West Side Stories. We also covered Romeo and Juliet, the Zeffirelli version, and we covered Laurence Olivier's Henry V, which actually came out a little bit before this and was a little bit different in terms of style and just approach to the material. All those versions are so different. I believe those are the only 4 adaptations of Shakespeare we've talked about. I might be forgetting 1 or 2, but Chad and I have talked ad nauseum about Shakespeare and how it's a tough cookie to crack, especially just on the first go. So I'm just curious to turn over to you first, Chad, just because you are kind of the resident newbie for Shakespeare of the two of us. But I'm curious because this is a new story, at least in this sense, to you. Though we have talked about Lion King on your channel, I know. But tell us, Chad, what are your thoughts on Hamlet? Because it's also definitely the spookiest of the three or the four that we've covered, or five that we've covered. So this is a little bit more akin to like Macbeth than it is a Romeo and Juliet or even one of his comedies. But even though there is some comedy, believe it or not, that is just not in this movie, but we'll talk about that in a sec too. Chad kind of alluded to it. But Chad, I just want to hear your thoughts on this because this is your first experience with Hamlet in general. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I believe I probably read this in school. I think I've read like a few of them in school, but it was like not one of those where I was studying Hamlet or studying Shakespeare.
Right.
It was one where they like forced us to read it in like an English class in high school, and I just probably was like, okay. And yeah, I'm glad that you described me as a newbie because I thought maybe you might say hater.
Well, I almost said skeptic, but I feel like we're past that point because like at least I think you're making the attempt to try to just immerse yourself more with it. So I didn't want to be like, oh, our Shakespeare skeptic here, but
yeah. And I think that's the point is that like I don't even want to say skeptic as far as like I don't think that it's great. I just think it's like really challenging, and that's not at all a bad thing. It's just like for someone who is just casually watching Shakespeare, I don't think that it is necessarily that accessible. And also, not that it really needs to be, but like it's just one of those things that like it requires at times more what do you call it? Just more
focus,
involvement.
more brain power. Yeah.
Yeah, to really try and like engage with what's going on.
Yeah.
How I watched this specifically is I watched it while on my computer I had the text side by side with the explanation of what everything means.
Oh, that's cool.
Because and recently after I watched Hamlet, I don't have the No Fear Shakespeare of it yet, but I want to buy it and like go through the play and just kind of like really try and like engage with all of the themes and stuff in it because there's a lot in there to unpack. And even like some stuff I'm sure that they cut out for the movie. So I want to engage with it more, but even just trying to read Hamlet cold is just so difficult for me. I'm just like, I'll read a whole monologue and I'm like, I can't even pick out like one like central thing that he's trying to say.
Right.
Even if I know that he's probably talking about the ghost, but he might also be talking about like the history of what the country's been going through and stuff like that. And I'm not really sure what they're saying. And I don't like to just instantly be lost when I'm trying to get into like a story. And I also don't want to sit there and like, I mean, maybe I will at one day have to sit there and like look up every single word because then it will take me forever to get through one page of the play. But we're not really here to talk about the play itself.
Right.
But reading or watching the movie with that like translation really helped me actually get into the story. Good. And I think it's just very interesting because of where I was when we talked about Henry V. That I was not a fan of that. I just did not think it was like good at all. But I'm wondering if I did the same thing that I did with Hamlet with that, if I would enjoy it a lot more. But I still, for some reason, I think because it has something to do with the cinematography of this one and how they actually use the sets and stuff, that it didn't really make it feel like sets, but actual like locations and stuff, and actually like felt kind of like real.
Yeah.
That I liked Hamlet like a lot more than I liked Henry V. And that might also be for like the content of it as well. Its relationship with other adaptations like The Lion King, something that I really love.
Yeah. And again, could help you understand it more because you're like, okay, so the uncle's Mufasa, he killed the king. The ghost is now speaking to his son and like his mother. The only thing that's a little different is the mother thing. Like, I don't think Sarabi like obviously Sarabi doesn't marry Scar. There's not that
Yeah.
aspect of it. And the way it ends, like it isn't, beat for beat the same, but the general construct of the plot is,
I actually one of the things I found most interesting is how Olivier and or the editors of the movie chose to kind of like go through the play, but like, change up how scenes are in the play.
Mhm.
Because I was like, it would go to another scene, and then I'd go, wait, where is that? Where am I? And then I'd be like, oh, this is like the last act, and they're just like kind of like changing how things are
Yeah.
operated from the play.
Yeah,
And
they
I thought
opened
that
the
was really
film with
interesting.
the yeah, they opened the film with the ending, which is a really cool device.
Yeah,
Yeah, what I love that you just said, like this feels, and I think this is what's different than this in Henry V, which was I thought really cool because it kind of, paid homage to the Shakespearean Globe, and like it started at the theater and then it opened up. Here, this is so cinematic, and I think that's
yeah,
why it's so engaging because we've seen movies now since, like all of the Brana versions have come out, and like Tragedy of Macbeth came out. The Cohen, was it Joel Cohen or Ethan Cohen? I think it was Joel Cohen. Um, Made that film, so very very similar to this, where it's like a lot of like shadows, big cavernous spaces. This big castle feels very lived in, very spacious, and very daunting and scary and haunting. And I think what I like about this version is that he tried so hard to separate it from the stage. He didn't want it to feel like a play. He wanted to make it feel like you could only experience this in a visual cinematic medium,
yeah,
where there were moments where I was like, "Oh, why are you doing that?" Like the to be or not to be speech is a voiceover. And I think that was just such a cool, unique choice to make some of the monologues in this thing inner monologues in Hamlet's head voiceover, because on stage you can't do
yeah,
that. I mean, you can do that, but it comes across a little cheesy, a little gimmicky. But
yeah.
in film, you can do voiceovers because realistically, he probably wouldn't be saying this stuff out loud, when
Yeah,
he's by himself. So I think it was cool that like a lot of the most iconic monologues in this thing were in his own head, which is cool and not cool because I'm like, oh, I want to hear Olivier deliver these words and like act them. But it's also really cool that he's at least trying something new with the medium to be like, I'm gonna let this exist in his head, because this whole film is very much about Hamlet as a character study, kind of trying to hone into the inner machinations of his mind, to where like it feels different than all the other versions. I mean, we talked about Timon and Pumbaa. I mean, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern completely cut from this thing. There are a lot of like bit roles and like townspeople that have been cut from this, because I think Olivier wanted to make this more streamlined about the inner monologues of Hamlet's head. It was almost like he was like, I'm not interested in everything else. I'm only interested in what's going on with Hamlet and only Hamlet. And all this stuff existing around him is quite literally existing around him. It doesn't matter for his version. And at first I was like, oh, that sucks. Like, I don't like that idea. But at the same time, I'm like, it is an idea, and it is something that is a bold filmmaking choice. You're not just going beat for beat, like you said, page for page, order by order of
yeah,
these scenes. You're actually trying to do something different with it, which I really appreciate. And I think that's why this is the one that wins. You don't see another Shakespeare film except for West Side Story, which is an adaptation. It's not literal. Win Best Picture like no other film has. So I think there's something to be said about this being the one, because I think it is the one that takes the most risky departures from the text, trying to make it different for the cinematic language. Even if I do prefer a more traditional staged Hamlet, this is a really cool idea and interpretation of it, if that makes sense.
yeah. I like how he constructed, even though like I was kind of like, oh man, I want Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Like I wanted to kind of see maybe like a little bit more of the comedy of it, but then I
Yeah,
was sitting there thinking, I was like, Laurence Olivier is going for something a lot like darker and introspective here. Like I
yeah,
don't think that his version of Hamlet would have worked with a big comedic kind of sidekick
I agree.
thing. So I'm actually kind of glad that they cut that out, because yeah, like you said, it just shows that he was really engaging with it on another level. That he was like, no, I don't have to do it exactly how Shakespeare envisioned it. I can actually like focus it even more, and I think that's pretty great. I enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed seeing, like a lot of the things that I've known through just like osmosis and culture. Just like there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, that are dreamt of in your philosophy. I'm like, oh, he said it. oh snap, like those big lines that come up.
Yeah.
And also I just kind of like really love this style. Like, it's spooky. It had like the kind of, like fog, and the ghost was actually
Mhm.
very creepy.
Yeah.
Coming up, and just how like he just like would show up, and they'd go, "What is that?" And then like the Ghost King would talk, and it would just like was very creepy when it would talk, or he
Yeah.
would talk, I guess. And yeah, just like the introspection of what death means, like death means, even if you know that there's like something after death because you've seen a ghost, and you're like, well, there must be something. I don't know if it's good, but there must be something. And then just the whole speech of to be or not to be, just like suicidal thoughts are very sad, but just like thinking about your own existence, and just like what it means to no longer exist, or what it means to die and go on to something else, or what like life means. And is life worth living, which we would say yes, it is.
Yeah.
But you know someone might be in a headspace where they question that, and they're like,
Yeah.
especially if you're like Hamlet, who's someone who's just very, I guess, maybe, I don't even know what they would say today, like the Gen Z would say today, but in my day it would have been something like emo or
Yeah.
something like that, or
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
goth, just like I'm really sad about life, and and stuff, and I'm gonna just dress really dark. But just like sad about his father's what he would come to find out is a murder. Um, and then also just kind of what he sees to be is his mother's betrayal.
Mm.
And just all of this, just kind of like plagues him so much that, he's just in a bad state. And then I love to see it go on to be, because like even in the Lion King, when you have Claudius or Scar, Scar in the Lion King is not like redeemable.
No.
He's basically just a piece of shit who wants power. And sorry if you're a Scar lover. And then Claudius, we see he actually like repents to God
Yeah.
for what he did. And then it's Hamlet. Like Simba would never do this, but it's Hamlet who goes to kill him, and then he's like, no, wait, if I kill him now after he repented, he would just go straight to heaven and things would be cool. But I want him to suffer. And I'm
Yeah.
like, shit, dude, this
Yeah.
is like a complex hero
Oh yeah.
story.
No, yeah, it gets dark, and it definitely goes there. And I like what you said. Like Claudius feels like more of a fleshed out, well-rounded character. He's
Yeah.
still villainous, obviously, but it is one of those things where the hero. I hate to use this quote over and over again, but it's the Joker thing of you like live long enough to, or the Two-Face thing, you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And I think that is
Yeah.
kind of true with Hamlet too. It's like getting pushed to the point where you are the villain. I mean, he kills the love of his life's father by accident, and that's another thing, the fate of Ophelia, if you will. But it's really sad what happens to her too. Like this is a
Yeah.
sad movie where I think the Lion King obviously had to take the liberties and
Oh,
change
yeah.
things up, obviously.
Well, they still
If Nala drowned herself, that would be terrible. But like I do think it is one of those things where like it is so dark and so miserable, and there is not a lot of levity, which I
yeah.
appreciate because it is different.
Yeah, I mean, I also do. I love how like when the Lion King does get super Shakespearean. I mean, you get the literal like betrayal of Scar on Mufasa, and like the sadness of that. The most recent time I watched that movie all the way through, when Simba is just like this happy kid, is excited for the future, and then like his uncle just like rips all of that away and just like outcasts him. I'm like, my God, poor Simba. He's just a little kid, dude. Like this is like rough. And
Well, and that's why Hamlet's so sad, and Ophelia's story is so sad too, because they are just kind of kids. I mean, it's a little less noticeable with this version because Olivia's a
yeah,
little older, but I mean, he is, I mean, a young kid. I mean, not to get into a lot of the background because I want to keep a lot of Hamnet a mystery because that's also coming out soon. But a lot of this has to do with Shakespeare's relationship with his own family and his own kids. So I think
mm,
there's a lot about this movie that is rooted in that exact idea of like they're just young, they don't know better. How do you navigate this world as a young person? Unsure of what is right, what is wrong versus what is must be done versus what must not be, and
Yeah.
that's the to be or not to be. Like, should you cease to exist to just take the burden off of your load, or should you do something in retribution, knowing you'll live with that quite literal ghost forever? You know?
Yeah. I mean, I do think it's a little bit like divorced from that because like Laurence Olivier and the actress who plays Ophelia, that
Gene Simmons,
they
yeah.
I don't think they were actual like kids,
No,
and as like people actors in the movie. So I think it's like that's where like when we covered Romeo and Juliet, like those were actual like kids.
yeah, and I think it makes
And
that film even more effective in that way. You know?
yeah, but with here, it's harder to connect with them like as kids, but like you kind of understand that they are. But yeah, either way, it's a lot for really anybody to go through, but especially young people. But yeah, like when you have like a Timon and Pumbaa in The Lion King, lighten things up, you don't really have that here, and I'm actually fine with it. Like I said, because
Yeah,
I like the tone of it. I love all the spooky stuff. I love the ghost and like that the implications that paints, and just like the I love the I'm just remembering now. I love the like graveyard scene
yeah.
where
The Grave Digger.
Gravedigger like gives him the skull, and he's like, I knew this guy, and he's like talking about the guy that the skull belonged to.
Yeah,
And and then it was just kind of weird that like he said, I knew this guy and I had a lot of fun with this guy, and he like tosses the skull or whatever at one
yeah,
point.
yeah.
Just like what?
Yeah,
But
that's another thing too. It's like, yeah, you can do all this stuff in your life, but at the end of the day, you might just get tossed aside like that. Like what is your
yeah,
legacy become, and is it all worth it? All this emotional turmoil, all this stuff, is it worth it to just be tossed aside by a gravedigger when they find your skull? Like
yeah,
that's crazy. You know?
yeah, it's a lot to think about as far as like mortality and stuff. And yeah, no, I mean that's a great point. But that's what this play and what this movie like I think gives to you, is just makes you think about all of this stuff. And it's a lot of stuff that I'm really interested in, as far as like the macabre and horror
Yeah,
and things like that. So this was like the perfect movie to ended up being the perfect movie for the Halloween season
yeah, yeah.
um to think about a lot of this stuff. And uh sorry, I'm just really just trying to, because I know there's other stuff to talk about with
It's
the
a lot
movie.
to wrap your head around. I mean, it is a dense piece of work, and I think that's why I mean, this is the one that a lot of people are like, this is Shakespeare's masterpiece, just in terms
Yeah,
of the play. Like, this is
I think
his
this is
best
my
work.
favorite.
Yeah, also because of it's also the most relevant to his life. Like, it is the most autobiographical in some ways.
Mm.
Which again we'll get to. I cannot wait for Hamlet to come out. I'm not going to talk about it because I told Chad to go in blind. But if anyone has read Hamlet out there, um, or even seen the trailers or just heard the hype, I mean, I'm very excited to see that. Having now seen this as well, with it being so fresh in your brain, I think it's going to add a lot of context to that film as well. And I just can't wait to talk about that, assuming we will. I mean, if it gets snubbed, I'd be shocked. But assuming that we will talk about that movie here too, and we could kind of go back to this conversation and see if that heightens this even more, if this heightens that even more. But yeah, I agree. I still think Romeo and Juliet, because of just the nostalgia and just because of the love story. Like, I'm so swept up in it. I love that theme. I love those performances.
Yeah,
I'd still probably put that number one in terms of Shakespeare we've covered here, but this is definitely really, really great. Like, this is a
yeah,
really engaging work, and I think it's because Hamlet itself is a great play, and it does a lot of the heavy lifting. But it is the choices that he makes to adapt it that make it great too. And I don't want to diminish that, even though there are some choices where I first had to be like, wait, what? I do really ultimately like them at the end of the day, for sure.
yeah. And I will say we'll probably touch on this a little bit later, anyways. But I did really, really, really love that "To Be or Not to Be" monologue that he did, and I
Mhm.
think it was like a brilliant choice to keep it silent, or keep it,
Yeah,
as a voiceover. And I don't know, this just has like so many like iconic like stuff. So
yeah,
if you haven't seen it, just definitely check this one out, because it's just
yeah.
really cool and creepy.
Mhm.
And I would say, like, if you're not that versed into Shakespeare, just kind of, maybe have a guide.
Yeah,
of some
and
sort.
and honestly, like the fact that you've just like kind of cracked the code on Shakespeare a little bit, like from last time we spoke, because it's always nerve wracking going into a Shakespeare conversation with you, only because I know how you felt about the last few. That's just been hard to grasp, hard to get into. So the fact that you like this one as much as you did is huge.
Yeah.
Like I think it's cool. Like, and maybe that is a testament to how good it is too visually to like make it easier for you to
Oh yeah.
understand, just like more absorbing. And it also could be a testament to how good The Lion King is in telling the story in a more engaging, accessible way. It could also just be that you're just trying something new on your end, which you said you are. So I'm just glad that we're kind of like cracking the code on it. So when we eventually get to like Midsummer Night's Dream in the 30s, like I believe there are also a few more little Shakespeare things here and there. It'll be really fun to see how much it can grow even more. But I'm really glad you like this one, Chad. It makes me very happy.
Yeah, I do want to try and go through and like read a lot of these and engage with them further, and then rewatch the movies. And who knows, maybe down the line, if we're like kind of trying to think about like when Picture This is not coming to an end as far as like not having anything to do, but like when we come to like where we're caught up a lot with new stuff, because there
Yeah.
always will be an Oscars, but maybe if we're like coming with ideas of other like episodes to do, maybe we can do like a Shakespeare episode where we revisit all
Yeah,
of the Shakespeare movies and kind of rank them or
I like that
something like
idea.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
let's
and then
table it. I love
I
it.
can see like how these movies have changed with further engagement with the
Yeah.
material.
Absolutely. Well, Hamlet went over really well with the Oscars. Wins 4 Oscars out of 7. It wins picture, best actor for Laurence Olivier, best art direction, black and white, best costume design, black and white. The first ever costume design winner, right there. It's also nominated for best director for Laurence Olivier, best supporting actress for Gene Simmons, and best music, dramatic or comedy. But obviously, this was the introduction to costume design. Um, oh, I was totally about to segue to the wrong movie. I was about to talk about shoes, but we're not there yet. I've got to go back. This movie, a lot of the monologues are inner monologues in Hamlet's head. He does not speak them aloud. So let's go to another film where the protagonist doesn't necessarily speak all her feelings aloud, but we definitely can feel the inner monologues in her head. I thought that was a pretty good segue. Let's segue now to Johnny Belinda. Chad, tell us about Johnny Belinda.
Johnny Belinda, directed by Gene Nigalesco, written by Alan Vincent and Irma von Cube. Cinematography by Ted McCord and music by Max Steiner. Starring Jane Wyman, Lou Ayres, Charles Bickford, Agnes Moorehead, Stephen McNally, Jan Sterling, Rosalind Ivan, Dan Seymour, Mabel Page, Alan Napier, Barbara Bates, Monty Blue, James Craven, Franklin Farnham, Al Ferguson, Frank Hagney, and Creighton Hale. Synopsis: a young, deaf, mute woman has been held back by everyone around her who have not understood her disability as to believe she is incapable of learning until a doctor provides the support she needs to grow and thrive, based on the 1940 play Johnny Belinda by Elmer Blaney Harris.
There you go. So yeah, very interesting here. Another one that like I feel like you could kind of force into pigeonhole into like the horror category if you wanted to, because it deals with like some real life horrors. I mean, the tagline is "She was alone with terror and torment." So like it's a little bit of a stretch just because it isn't like a horror film by the
Yeah.
traditional standards, but there is horrific stuff. The biggest thing to talk about, obviously, and this is a spoiler for the movie, so tune out if you don't want to know anything, but there's a very prominent rape sequence. I mean, a lot of the movie is about her, going through childbirth with this child of rape. And then, this whole court case that happens when she takes retaliation against that person. But what's very interesting is that like this was I think one of the first films to like break the code of the time and like
Wow.
show something like that or indicate that anything like this could have happened. This was a very big film in that sense. It really
Wow.
broke kind of the code, broke the norms, broke the standards. I mean, it gets nominated for so many Academy Awards. I mean, this was really the juggernaut of the year, even though it wasn't like the highest grossing film of the year, but this was like the big movie that everyone was ready to like award so many awards to. And then it only wins one award. It has a record for most losses. But I just think it's so cool that a movie that I had never even heard of until we started this slate, probably
Right.
you as well. It was such an influential film at the time, and maybe it's just because like with time we've been a little bit better about discussing, deafness, muteness, and like talking about rape in general. But like, I think for the 40s is a really good step. Like, this is very progressive for that time. This and one other film I think are really progressive in that sense of dealing with like different, disabilities and stuff like that. But Chad, what are your thoughts on Johnny Belinda?
Yeah, I mean, I also never heard of this before, and looking at the title, uh, I was just kind of like, "What is this movie, Johnny Belinda?" I thought it was going to be kind of like a My Cousin Vinny, like, "Hey, I'm Johnny Belinda, forget about it."
Yeah,
But
definitely not that tone for sure.
nothing to do with the mob or just like slick New Yorkers or anything
Yeah,
like that, or well, there is law. There is a law
definitely,
sequence in it. There
definitely.
is a courtroom movie in a way too.
Yeah,
Um, in the same way that like I would say like a Peyton Place is a courtroom movie.
right.
Um,
Oh, this is very Peyton Place. This movie feels
yeah,
very Peyton Place. Yeah.
yeah, actually, yeah. Um, but no, I love this movie.
Mhm.
I thought this movie was incredible. It was probably maybe the most surprising I think of them that I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, this movie, okay." Kind of a deal. Yeah, I mean, I love the deaf like representation of it. I mean, really it's just one of these movies that kind of shows just how like they're just how like, I want to say disability or like just like a I didn't want to this because this isn't like a mental illness kind of thing. And there's
No.
another movie that we'll get into that is similar to this in the way that like mental illness is handled, but also like disabilities were handled like back in specific times where they just didn't have an understanding. And it's almost feels like that they didn't want to have an understanding. So they didn't care enough to look deeper to where like, Belinda's parents were basically, just kind of like, oh, she can't learn. She's dumb, like how they say, because like they used to say like deaf and dumb, which I think also meant like deaf
Yeah.
and mute. But
Yeah,
with
mute dumb
that,
was a word for mute. Yeah, yeah.
but with all that like coupled, they also kind of took it to mean like, well, if you're deaf and mute, you can't, you're just really done for. You can't really learn anything. And honestly, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like how maybe in a less vicious and malicious way then, because I don't think her parents meant her any harm. I just think
Yeah.
they genuinely just didn't think that she could learn anything. But now that we're seeing in today with, so much misunderstanding about like autism and like what
Yeah.
that is and how, a lot of people today and the government will say like, if you're autistic, you're not going to have a good life. You can't, you're going to be destitute and stuff like that. And we, of course, know that it's a whole spectrum and that that's not, can't be further from the truth.
Right.
But with going back to, being deaf and just having other sort of disabilities and even how we looked at something like Sound of Metal and talked about it on here where, it has become like a whole community where
Yeah.
there's even now people who um, will look down on the idea of that deafness is something that you can even fix. It's like just a part of your life. It's like who you are. Like it's just a trait that you have, and it's not like a bad thing. It's not something to be fixed. And here, you get to see a woman, living with that, and having people judge her, and then having the doctor who I was like, this is like the greatest man of all time at
Yeah.
one point where I'm just like, dude, like, uh, is told like, you need, can you go help this cow that's really sick? And, his assistants, like, they don't have money. They're not going to give you money. Don't bother with them. And then he's like, no, I got to go help someone. And I'm like, I just wish like we had like that compassion today,
Yeah.
where now it's just all about like, what can you do for me? How much money do you have? That's your value, and you have no other value. And I love how this movie says something different, and it says, no, people have value. People can learn. People are more capable than you think that they are. Just don't write someone off as dumb and they can't learn, and they can't learn because you're not giving them the opportunity to
Right.
learn. If you just
Right.
put them in a box and say like you have to do all these chores and you don't have time to actually read. And then we see Belinda reading, like not only just like learning when the doctor's there, but taking it on upon herself to read in her spare time and
Mhm.
better herself and just like figure out how to become adjusted. And then when she has her child, like you said, the child born of unfortunate circumstances, she loves the child and she is a very good mother. Even when they're
Yeah.
about to try and take the child away from her, the assistant who has like all this jealousy um, within her sees just how good of a mother she is, and she's like, "Wait, we might not be doing the right thing here."
Yeah.
Um, and then when you get down to the in courtroom scene that I think is excellent because it was a nail biter. It's one that I was like on the edge of my seat, like the entire like, is the right thing going to happen, or
Right.
is this going to end in like a very like unsatisfying way, like where you would maybe expect it to because of how the justice system normally
Yeah.
rewards people who are
Yeah.
doing bad stuff. And then the one part I just want to mention the one part where the assistant figures out that she needs to say something. There's just a great moment there that I'm just like, yes. And then I'm like, but why isn't the court stopping her? She's speaking out of order here.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those, like, fictionalized, like, kind of glamorous Hollywood endings that, like, you wanna see, especially going through a film that is, like, ultimately pretty sad, and,
Yeah.
like, horrific. Like, there are bright spots to it, like her just learning how to communicate better, but, like, ultimately, it is really sad what happens to her and that, this whole,
Oh
like,
yeah.
unfortunate circumstance kind of clouds like, kinda takes over the narrative of the film. It's not as much about her just being deaf and mute, but now being a deaf and mute person who can't speak out against an abuser, which is, like, a
Yes.
really interesting conflict. And then at the end, it almost would have been nicer if she is the one to get that justice herself, but having someone else speak up for her is also a great thing only because it shows that other people are now coming to her aid. She's not
Yeah.
alone in this world. She has people rallying for her and believing her, and that does come from her learning to find a voice in an unconventional means as well. Um, but yeah, it is very, Hollywood ending. But I do think that's fine, especially given how dark and heavy it is for most of its
Oh
runtime. It's
yeah.
nicer to see this kind of more broad, kind of Capra-esque finale. But I do really like it. I think it really builds to a really interesting, satisfying conclusion. I think you could have gone the route of her getting locked up and living her life, still repressed, and that's sad. I think there's a great movie to be had there, but also it's not this movie. And I like that this movie has some glimmers of hope, um, despite how dark it is.
Yeah. I mean, I at the end of that movie was so invested in like what happened to Belinda and Johnny that I was just like, I would have been like just crushed if like it had gone the way that I thought it could, like you just described. Um, and I'm glad that she did kind of get her like stand up for herself, because
Yeah.
she did get taken advantage of, and basically like I think the sexual assault scene I think is like really important because you just like think about someone who is so vulnerable who can't like I don't even know if can a mute person scream?
No. Like, I just
Yeah.
don't think they produce sound, really.
So in that way, like you can't scream, you can't, and like you said, like don't have the vocabulary to really express it, and then also like what's the social standing of the person that you're about to accuse, and you're just like a lowly like farm person, and
Yeah.
like how like you see how the town is very clicky, and they don't like people who are weird or different, or you know on the outskirts of like what you consider a normal functioning civil person to be. And so when you have someone like this who no one else is really like her, you can see how most people would probably not side with her. They
Right.
wouldn't think she'd be fit to take care of a child. And then you get to see that play out. And I love how that courtroom scene has so much going on that you're just like, just so invested in what's going to happen, even though it does have the Hollywood ending. Yeah, like you said, I don't think that's a negative. I think it's just you really need that at the end. And I love, it kind of reminds me of stuff like, A Few Good Men and Witness for the Prosecution and Peyton Place, where it's just like you have like bombshell stuff that happens. And, even though I was saying like, would that happen in real life? But like really like here, this is kind of like a small town court case where it's like, the town probably would be invested in the scandal of, this prominent guy being accused who's about to be married. And then the person he's being married to is now saying like he's a bad guy. And this lady is innocent and she has a kid and she's a great mother and all this stuff. And I love the characters in this. And I love Belinda's father and how he
Charles Bronford's character. Yeah, absolutely.
How he starts off as you kind of dislike him a little bit because you're like, he doesn't care about his daughter. Like he's just saying that she's dumb, she's worthless, and she should work more and just all the stuff. And then you just realize just how he wasn't kind of like, given and most people aren't really given like the blueprints of how to raise someone who's deaf and mute and just doesn't know anything about it. And instead of being like, a person who doesn't like grow, he totally grows and he accepts the doctor and like talks to the doctor and they're all, trying to build this support system for her. And he grows into a great dad who is supportive of his daughter. And I love the scene. I was like it was the only movie here in this slate that made me applaud. And it was the moment in when he's like, what is it? I think he was like trying to figure out when he found out his daughter was pregnant and he was trying to figure out who did it and stuff. And then I can't remember what he was about to do, but he was like about to do something. And then maybe he was about to like confront her or like, something. And then the doctor like takes him and he goes, you can't do that. He's like, damn right I can't. I'm her father. Well, then act like it, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
And it's just like I love how this movie talks about the ideals of like what it means to be a true father. And it's like, not like forcing your will upon people, but just like creating an environment that they can express themselves and learn and grow and make mistakes and not have fear of that mistake. Because when you make a mistake, the chances are you're going to be more disappointed in yourself than anyone else is going to be disappointed of you. So if you start to then add on to that and compound it, it's going to make the problem worse. I think so. Yeah, I just this movie has so many like great like things, and then like it also has like so many great like bombshell moments where like people start to figure out what that guy did. And it has nothing to do with Belinda saying anything. It's this guy being so like confident and sure of himself that, he's not going to get caught and no one's going to care and all this stuff, that he just lets things slip all the time.
Yeah.
He just like tells the father, like, he looks like his dad or something like that. And the Belinda's dad's like, Doom, and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh shit. Oh, it's about to go down. And then, but that ends up with a sad moment. But then, we get another one later where his fiance, they get married. His wife finds out, and I don't know. It's just a brilliant movie. I love it.
Yeah. No, I know. I was letting you go because it is really great. And I'm glad you like it so much. No, yeah. And the only thing I can add to that, it's interesting because we don't really get a lot of films centered around the deaf experience as much as we should. And I mentioned at the top of the show, I know you love Coda. So like, that's one of those movies that like, obviously this is not very similar. I mean, it just features deaf characters. There's really not a lot to it. That family is already, communicative. Like it's not like them learning how to navigate deafness in this way. This honestly reminded me more of like The Miracle Worker, which is a really great story about Helen Keller and Annie Sullivan trying to teach her how to speak as a deaf, mute, and blind, which is crazy. Oh, she wasn't mute, but she was deaf and blind. And
Yeah.
then the only difference though is that that film is, I think, a little bit more centered around Annie's story and as like the teacher, whereas
Mhm.
this one, what I like about it is it's still Belinda's story. It's still her perspective. Like she is still
Yeah.
the anchor of it. There are other things that happen around her, other characters, and like you said, there's other characters that come to realizations without even needing Belinda to say them necessarily. But I do like that Belinda is still the lead of her own story. She kind of does have that agency and dignity as a character, which again for the 40s is so ahead of its time. Just the
Yeah.
story of women coming together, the fact that women are standing up for women against men, like that's something that's hugely feminist that like you do
Oh, yeah.
not see. And I do really like the happy ending. I mean, if you look at this film slate, you have like two movies that end really sadly, like Hamlet and Red Shoes. And then you have two films that kind of have a more positive note at the end of a sad story like this and The Snake Pit. Then you have Treasure of the Sierra Madre, which is like the best of both worlds. You get both happy and sad endings for depending on who you're following character
Right.
wise. It's a bit of an ironic one, but we'll talk about it. But I like how this slate, while all five films are heavy, I like how this has some levity at the end. It's going to make it more rewatchable than some of these other ones for sure that we'll get to in a sec. But yeah, Johnny Belinda. The Academy loved nominating it, but only gave it one win, which is really, really unfortunate. But it is fortunate that she won because actress Jane Wyman became the one winner of this film for Best Actress. It was nominated for Picture, Director for Jean Negulesco, or Nugulesco, I don't know. Actor for Lou Ayres, Supporting Actor for Charles Bickford, Supporting Actress for Agnes Moorehead, Writing, Screenplay, Music, Dramatic or Comedy, Sound Recording, Art Direction, Black and White, Cinematography, Black and White, and Film Editing. So many nominations for that one for black and white categories. But there's another film that got nominated for a lot of the color categories. Or at least for art direction color. It won best art direction color. It's a very colorful film. The only film in color of this slate. Let's talk, Chad, about The Red Shoes.
The Red Shoes, directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. Written by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. Cinematography by Jack Cardiff. Music by Brian Eastdale. Starring Anton Walbrook, Marius Goring, Moira Shearer, Robert Helpman, Leonide Massine, Albert Basserman, Ludmilla Churina, Esmond Knight, Austin Trevor, and Eric Berry. Synopsis: a dancer must dance, and a conductor must conduct. But can greatness be achieved if the dancer is not willing to give up the rest of life's pleasures to focus on dancing, or is she just a victim of a toxic instructor? Based on the 1845 fairy tale The Red Shoes by Hans Christian Andersen.
Yes. The Red Shoes, a little behind the scenes. This month we were going to do, and this is crazy behind the scenes, because you're not going to see this episode for a little while. We were going to do 2010 because it was Halloween. We were going to do Black Swan as a horror film. And I was like, oh, well, it was a 10 film slate, and we had a guest that we wanted on. So we're like, you know what, we should wait till I'm not on a cruise to do a 10 film slate with a guest. But then we picked this slate instead. And honestly, I know people have said it out there, so it's no secret that this and Black Swan have a lot in common, but it was a really fitting kind of replacement for Black Swan here to have this film to talk about. I don't think it leans as much into the horror as Black Swan does in a very overt way, but it is kind of cool to see that parallel once again of someone kind of being consumed by their art. Because we haven't talked about Black Swan here, but we both seen it and I love it. But kind of like that idea of art versus personal and trying to let your life kind of separate from your art, but then they kind of get interwoven one of the same, and it kind of drives you crazy being an artist, kind of being pushed and pulled by all these different directions. I mean, it is literally the same exact theme as Black Swan. It's just conveyed in a little bit of a different way. But I just thought that was really interesting. I was like, wow, we literally replaced Black Swan with like the OG Black Swan. But is this better? Is this worse? We'll have to talk about it in a sec. But Chad, what did you think of The Red Shoes? Because this is a first watch for both of us, right?
Yeah, first watch for me. As far as comparing it to Black Swan, like qualitatively, I'll probably have to rewatch Black Swan. But I will say I do think this is a really good movie. I liked the themes of it. I liked the actual musical that they have in it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I think it's like pretty incredible that they have just like almost like a full musical within the movie. And just the idea of just the idea of just it kind of gives you a lot of whiplash vibes too, with
Uh-huh.
the toxic instructor, and
Yes.
how he expects something from you. He expects you to give your all, like 110% to um being the best that you can be. um but what that means to him is might be very different than what it means to the actual person who's supposed to give 110%, and
Right.
maybe they want to give more, so like a 90%,
Yeah.
and actually have a life with that. And then how the instructors, what do you call it, insecurities and like baggage, uh plays into how he treats others,
Mhm.
and how a lot of this pressure, uh where you think that maybe it could be like good teaching to tell someone, give this your all, like you want this, go for it, and don't no half measures, uh go full measure, and actually commit, and do this, because that's what the greats do, is they like bleed for their art and all this stuff. But like, how far is too far? And like, if you push someone to ignore like the other things in their life, like a burgeoning romance, um and stuff, but really, was that holding her back kind of a
Right.
deal? Like, was that she found especially like someone that she was working with, that it might like help the creative experience to you know uh to be so involved with someone that she's working with. I mean, unless there's like it's a toxic relationship, which it didn't really seem to be like that much. Um so yeah, I don't know, it's very interesting. I love like the spooky vibes of the Red Shoes musical itself.
Yeah.
Felt very like kind of like Edward Scissorhands, Sweeney Todd-esque, like a Tim
Uh-huh.
Burton
Yeah.
directed musical
Yeah.
almost. And just also the idea that like the character in the red shoes would dance until she dies, and then that's
Mhm.
how this ends, as she dies with red shoes on. um Very, very sad, but
Yeah.
very interesting, and and stuff as well. Curious
Yeah.
about your thoughts of it though.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because like my favorite movie of all time, Singing in the Rain. Everyone always critiques that, like it's amazing, but there's that one big ballet sequence in the
Right.
middle that like takes away from it. I'm like, no, but it's such a beautiful representation of color and sound. In this movie, it's like it's kind of the opposite for me, where like I'll just say right now, like that 17-minute ballet of the Red Shoes is probably the best filmmaking of the 40s in a bubble. Like I think that
Nice.
sequence is glorious. And I love it because it's not just a ballet on a stage. It starts as a ballet on a stage and then slowly the stage disappears and you're like in the streets and it changes locations. But what's cool is like the camera doesn't really cut a lot. It just kind of fades in and out of different backgrounds and different figures kind of come in and go in this space. Like there's like the newspaper man that she dances with, which I think is such a cool visual effect. Like if visual effects was a category back then, this would hands down win. Like I just love the
Yeah.
way this utilizes the cinematic language. And this honestly kind of reminds me of Hamlet in that way where you're using the cinematic language to tell a story that you cannot do on stage. You can do it on stage, but it would be so different. Like this is the only way it can be seen is cinematically, and that is what this ballet does. And that's why I loved it. And I don't think it's a movie like Singing in the Rain where this kind of ballet kind of halts it in its tracks. If anything, until the ballet, I was like, okay, I'm liking this. It's very well made. I mean, the Technicolor is gorgeous. It's gorgeously shot. Performances are good. I'm getting what's going on. There's obviously a ballet dancer, a ballet teacher, instructor, and this pianist guy, whatever. But then once that ballet comes, I'm like on cloud nine, adrenaline high, and then afterwards, I'm like, all right, we're back in the regular flow of things. To where I almost felt like it was the opposite, where the film needed a punch, and it had that punch at the perfect moment. But I do think putting it centralized, like I do wish the beginning and end, the first and third acts, as good as they are, were not as great as that centerpiece, to where I was a little underwhelmed because
Hmm.
this film is out there like as one of the greatest films of all time in a lot of top 10 lists. It is on the Sight and Sound list. So I will eventually rewatch this, and I'm excited to rewatch this now, kind of knowing what to expect for Sight and Sound. And I think I will like it a lot more because it is one that like a lot of people just like default 5-star, love it, praise it, amazing film. I
Yeah.
like it a lot. It's just I think that centerpiece is so strong that I almost wish the rest of the movie were as interesting as it. Because we've seen stuff like Black Swan, we've seen other movies like Whiplash where like there's this constant tug of war between personal and work and having to put yourself in the art, and when the art starts to become dangerous where it starts to consume you. And I love those themes and those ideas, but I feel like other films like Black Swan have done it even further. And I know it's kind of crazy to call like this masterpiece, technicolor masterpiece of the 40s, compare it with like a 2010 thriller by Darren Aronofsky, but I really do think there are films that I think have taken this and rolled even further with it. Visually, I don't think anything's going to top this year or elsewhere. Like, I think it is gorgeous to the eye. It just, I really hope when I rewatch it, I like the other stuff as much as I like the ballet, because the ballet is so good. But even the ballet has glimpses of her real life in the ballet. Like, the ballet is not just the ballet of the Red Shoes, it is also her life story. What's her name? Victoria's life story, kind of watching it unfold through dance, to where I
Yeah.
almost wonder if this was just released as a 20-minute short film or like 25-minute short film, would it have been stronger just as its own little piece than this elaborative, longer, elongated story? I don't know. And I think that's the thing, is I want to just rewatch it because I think now I know what to expect. Because I heard going in that it was a little bit of a horror film, but it also was about dance, but it was also like had this really great centralized ballet. So I think I just went into this with so many expectations, and this film is just so different than what I expected it to be, that it's
Yeah.
hard to like even put a star rating or a ranking on it, because it's obviously so well done. It's just, is it what I expected? No. But is that a problem? Also no. And also the fact that it got snubbed for cinematography just makes me want to put it number one just out of solidarity. But because
Yeah.
how in the world, especially because they separated color and black and white, how is this not one of the top 5 color cinematography works of the 40s or 48 itself? It's crazy. But yeah, I really like it. I think it brings up just interesting conversations about art and life, and that stuff I can relate to, obviously being on a contract where I do 12 to 15 performances a week of different shows. It's a lot on your body, and you sometimes have to like kind of put yourself first. And I'm literally, you see, hear it in my voice, I'm coming off of a few days of vocal rest, and then just like not being in the shows for a few days just because I needed it for my body. But there are people who will push, there are people who will drive themselves literally mad doing it, and that's a real thing in every job, not just art, but in just life, everyday life, your desk jobs and your tech jobs and your engineering jobs, anything. Like, you can push yourself to the point where you have no return. And I think that's what's sad about this movie. This is a sad ass movie, but
Yeah.
it just offers so much. It's just a feast for the eyes. So I really do like looking at it. I love that ballet sequence. That ballet sequence does a lot of heavy lifting, but ultimately I enjoyed it for all those reasons, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you said it all. It has got a lot of great, like, tones and themes, and just like, how the movie unfolds, and like the how it looks, and the close-ups, just iconic shots,
Yeah.
like even the one of Victoria, where it just like kind of like shows her face, and that's like the cover of the Criterion or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, I mean, iconic. And I just love how, because like this whole show, and just like, film fandom in general is just all about watching like art, and then going and like applying it to like real life, and just being like, well, what does this mean? What is this saying? And seeing like a musical, or I keep saying musical, but it's a ballet.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's no like singing in it, but yeah, I mean, it's a performance. You could just say
Yeah,
that.
the ballet, reflecting the life of the characters in the movie, where you know you have the instructor or director, um, being like toxic and stuff, and then in the play you can see like the shoemakers kind of
Mm.
weirdly all over her, and stuff, and following her, and it just gets really creepy in a lot of these sequences. There's so many great like horror style, like, sequences where I'm like, is there about to be a jump scare in this ballet? It's
Right.
like so
Yeah.
creepy, where things start getting closer as the camera moves, and stuff, and you're just like, oh my god. But yeah, I love how they did that. And I love how they, yeah, kind of like Singing in the Rain, where they take it, and you go into the ballet and you're expecting it to be like make sense as far as what you can do in reality, and then they'd start doing it where, uh certain things happen that you're like, that wouldn't happen. Although, I have seen Harry Potter and the Cursed Child on stage, and I'm like, they do literal magic on that
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah.
So I'm like, maybe maybe that's what they were doing in the Red Shoes, where you're like, well, now she's gonna have to sit down and put on these red shoes. And no, she just like jumps in the air and they appear on her feet. And I'm like, whoa, kind
It's
of a
really
deal.
technologically advanced for sure. Yeah.
And I'm just like, you can only really do that with filmmaking unless you figure out a way to make them appear on her feet, on like a real stage. I don't know if that's what you guys do in your Disney shows, but
You'll have to find out. You
literal
will find out
magic.
soon.
Yeah, I guess I'll find out one day. But no, I mean, I do think this is really good. Although, I do hear your criticisms that are like maybe not as much like full criticisms, but just more like skeptical. Like I need another viewing of this to
Yeah.
really wrap my head around what's going on, because when you have a movie like this that's so praised by so many like prominent people that it's on like a sight and sound list, that you're like, well, so many people have seen brilliance in this, and I think it is brilliant, but like also like I have some issues that maybe could get cleared up if I watch it again. So I'm on the same kind of level, where I'm like, I need another watch probably, but I do think it is very good, and I like the how it's kind of like Black Swan and Whiplash and all this stuff, and what it has to say about obsession and toxicity and all that. So yeah, I really like it.
Cool. Well, the Red Shoes, the Academy liked it. Not enough to nominate for cinematography, which is just such a travesty, but it's nominated for two. It wins 2 out of the 5 it's nominated for. It wins Best Music, Dramatic or Comedy, and Best Art Direction Color, but it's also nominated for Picture and for Best Motion Picture Story Writing. So that is the Red Shoes. There's a lot of people out to get you in the art world. A lot of people just trying to weasel their way in, and real snakes, if you will, of the craft. I don't know. It's hard to transition, to segue from the Red Shoes to the Snake Pit, but alas, we got to do it. So the Snake Pit, Chad, tell us about the Snake Pit.
It was like, the Red Shoes, like you might find yourself in a pit of despair or a
Ah, yeah,
pit
there you
of
go.
snakes. I don't know.
Yeah, no, here you go. You mentioned Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. You know who else can talk to? You know what animal Harry can talk to? Snakes. I don't know. It's hard to segue. You could just talk about like what's even more terrifying than like literally becoming the character you're playing on stage is not knowing you are the character you're playing on stage because you have amnesia or whatever. I don't know. The Snake Pit, another dark, really really sad movie, but let's talk about it.
The Snake Pit, directed by Anatoly Litvak, written by Frank Partos, Milan Brand, and Arthur Lawrence. Cinematography by Leo Tover. Music by Alfred Newman. Starring Olivia de Havilland, Mark Stevens, Leo Jin, Celeste Holm, Glenn Langan, Helen Craig, Leif Erikson, Beulah Bondi, Lee Patrick, Howard Freeman, and Natalie Schaefer. Synopsis: a woman develops a form of schizophrenia from apparent childhood trauma and finds herself in a mental institution with no knowledge of how she got there, based on the novel The Snake Pit by Mary Jane Ward.
Absolutely. So, we just talked about Johnny Belinda a few films ago, even the Red Shoes, this idea of like mental illness, or not necessarily mental illness in Johnny Belinda's sense, but you mentioned like deafness being like, a disability and stuff to navigate. The Snake Bit kind of takes that and like levels it up even further, because this is not just about someone who's schizophrenic, but also who has amnesia, can't remember things, short-term memory loss. And the movie itself also kind of like mirrors that in its structure as well. It's a lot of flashbacks. It's a lot of weaving in and out of present, past. You sometimes struggle to keep up with exactly where you are and what's going on, but in a purposeful sense, because that's what the character is doing as well. And there's also that unreliable narrator thing, because you are seeing this through the eyes of someone who is experiencing this. How much of it is true? How much of it is false? And then when you find out what is false is true, and what you thought was true is false, it's rather sad. And this is one that ends again, kind of with a happy ending, like Johnny Belinda as well, or a happier ending, I should say. But Chad, what were your thoughts on this one, The Snake Pit?
Yeah, I thought this one was very good. It gave me vibes of like, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which I
Yes,
really loved.
very much so.
And I found it like really interesting just how the movie starts, where it's just like like a woman talking to someone, and then you realize like she's talking to herself, and um and then she's in a mental institution, and then you're just like, oh my god, like what is going on? How did this happen? How'd she get here? You just have so many questions, and then the rest of the movie is just kind of like answering that, but like you said, in a very um shaky kind of way, where you kind of feel like maybe you're schizophrenic at times, where you're just like, what's reality, kind of a deal.
Right.
We also talked about like A Beautiful Mind, that is kind
Mhm.
of like something like this, where you're trying to figure out like what's really happening, and whatnot. I think this is a better movie than A Beautiful Mind,
Oh,
but
hands down. Yeah.
but yeah, I just really liked it. I thought that um the performance by her was incredible. I just think like she like really represents kind of like the horror of what's going on, but like I started to get like a really big like sad vibes with it,
Mm.
pretty big time, just thinking about like, especially towards the end, that just has like all these people that found themselves to be in a place like physically but also mentally of like uh they they have a disability that they can't subscribe to the same kind of thought process that is deemed to be neurotypical and normal of a functioning member of society. So society then puts them in a place that you know so they could be safe by themselves, but really then you think about like, is that a community, is that a life to live? Like, these were people that were like once little kids, and then you just think about like the natural kind of progression of a disorder like that, and just like wondering like if this is the best way, like to rip someone from their family and put them in a place that where you don't have to deal with them, and you pay people to deal with them, and stuff like that. And it's just like, I don't know, it just like made me think about a lot of the stuff and how we treat, or at least used to treat people
Yeah.
um with that kind of mentality, and doing like I don't know if it's like kind of barbaric forms of treatment as far as like electric shock. I've actually heard that like people have used it and it like works for some people. I
Mm.
don't know. Don't quote me on that.
No, I
Um,
know. Yeah, I know.
but with the efficacy of all that, but it's just like there's the question of like how do we treat people with these kind of things, and like also the question of like, if someone has a thing like this, are they actually dangerous to someone else or themselves, or are you overreacting? And
Mhm.
I know like with her, like when they show her like interacting with her husband before being like sent off to the snake pit, um it just kind of shows that she just didn't really know like what the month was, but then also like the camera kept eyeing the knife, and I
Yeah.
don't know if that was like showing that she's eyeing the knife, or
Mm.
showing that like maybe the husband's thinking of, what if she's crazy and she's going to take that knife and do something bad with it.
Mhm.
And I think like you said, like the unreliable like narration, and just like how that goes into
Yeah.
the fear of someone dealing with someone who all of a sudden is just starting to go, like, if you like, if my wife, like, I showed up and she just all of a sudden didn't know what the month was, and like she started to show like really like crazy, so I don't mean crazy in like a very negative
Yeah, I know what you mean.
sense, but like in a very like different, she doesn't really know what's going on, and then just the kind of the fear of that, and from both parties. So yeah, I love how it explores that, and I love how it's just very representative also of like what people might go through if you are committed and seen as not
Yeah.
having your full faculties and of memory and everything like that, and just how scary that would be for someone who it has like this like deep like schizophrenia and is hearing voices or talking to themselves, or even someone who has like dissociative identity disorder and like
Yeah.
has like has other personalities within themselves and
Yeah.
things like that. And yeah, I don't know. I found this to be yeah, this is one of the more horrific ones I think
Yeah.
of the slate. So
Yeah. Again, fitting in our Halloween theme. Again, not your traditional horror movie in that sense, but
right.
yeah, definitely horrific. And even that image of the snake pit itself, like I did kind of roll my eyes when she like said it's like a snake pit, but only because that's the title. Like I think if that wasn't the title, I would have been like whatever. But I'm like okay, fine, cheesy. But like that like pan out with like where you see just how deep they really are. It's like that sequence in The Dark Knight Rises with like the young
Mm,
Bane sequence where they're just like all the way down there. Like it's so sad to see it, and it leaves a pit in your stomach, literally. Um,
mm,
but I do think I didn't even intend on that. But I do think like it's interesting because at times I struggle with, this movie is trying to be an indictment of facilities like this and show the horrors of it in a way that like Cuckoo's Nest is as well. Like, but then at the end it's trying to be like, but it can work and like people can get better and like these institutions work. But I'm like, isn't the whole movie to show that the institutions are like flawed and there are really terrible people? And like, yes, there are some good people there who want to help, but also like sadly for some people they don't get that recovery. So it's also like I'm kind of like, is this giving just this happy ending for this character, even though we all know that like usually places like this, once you're there, you're there, and that's the horror of it. I would have liked for them to have a more horrific stance and not like a have a cake eat it too type deal where it's like,
mm,
well, she got out because she spoke to the right doctors and had a loving husband, and she had nice nurses to kind of get rid of the bad nurses. But for every nice nurse, there's 3 or 4 bad nurses in this movie too. So I'm like, I wish it was a little bit more frank about the horrors of that mental institution and like trying to see that through to the end. But at the same time, I like that there's hope to show that this woman can still live a happy life and try to find peace despite her circumstances. I think that's an important message. It just sometimes contradicts the whole like these mental institutions are bad conversations as well. I think if there was a way to kind of find a little bit more of a nuanced conversation of like there are ways you can get help that are not this like horrible government run facility, I think that would have been a lot cleaner. But it is kind of a little bit tough to negotiate between like the horrors of the facility, but also like, but she made it out okay because she had a good doctor on her side. So that was one thing I struggled with. But I do like
yeah,
that there is some hope. Like I feel like if you are someone who's suffering from something like this, you can try to find a little bit of solace knowing that you can get better. But also like, how low do you have to go to get better, which is the sad and unfortunate and horrific part of it. But at least it leaves a lot to think about, and I think that's what's good about this
yeah,
film is it is the 1940s depiction of mental illness. So you're never going to have a clear cut, very nuanced response. Like the fact that this is being covered in the 40s, like we talked about Johnny Belinda with rape, is huge. Like that's just huge that they're talking about this stuff and that they're letting this be seen by anyone, even if it's not the most responsible now commentary. And I do think even then, like, I don't think this is irresponsible by any means. I think it still has really good things to say and does get the point across that there are evil people in this world who are going to try to take advantage of those who can't, fend for themselves. So I think it definitely gets its point across. And Olivia de Havilland is just insane. Well, we'll talk about her later for sure. But like, I'm like, whoa, this movie works, I think, because of her. I don't know if another actress would have brought the same to this role in a similar way that I feel about a lot of performances in this slate. Like, I cannot imagine another actor in that role. And I think for this sense, yeah, like Olivia de Havilland, there are a few other performances that we'll talk about on Picture This that I'm sure will contest with this. But this could be my favorite of hers, if not a different film from 1938, which we'll talk about someday. But big fan of hers. She's one of my Pop Op's favorite actresses too. So it was great to see like this be like one of the meatiest roles she gets to play, even though she doesn't win for this one. But yeah.
yeah. I don't disagree with you. I think that's a very interesting. It's always an interesting, like kind of thing to see, like well, what's the ending like? Should it be a happy ending? Should it be a bittersweet ending, or just a straight up sad ending? What works for the movie, the story you're trying to tell, and the message you're trying to get across? And I think you make a good point. Like, it's kind of good that it has a happy ending, but what if it didn't? And I
Mhm.
wonder if like maybe the movie might have been a little bit stronger for you too. If like, they have the happy ending where she gets out and everything, and then it cuts to her like, in the corner in a straitjacket, and that was all in her mind. And that kind of like goes, I know, and that kind of goes towards like the beginning of the movie where they kind of subvert your expectations of like what is actually going on when
Yeah.
she's not talking to anyone, she's
It
talking to
would be like
herself.
Belinda going to jail at the end of Johnny Belinda. It would be that kind of pivot where you're like, oh,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it would. And I just wonder if that would have been, it's kind of like also like the if you've seen Get Out, I will just say that Get Out has a pretty satisfying ending, but
yeah,
initially it didn't. And then
yeah,
they were like, no, let's go with the happy ending because that's the better, or maybe not the better ending, but it's the more satisfying ending, especially
yeah,
around this time. So yeah, and thinking about just like the time too, that like back in the 40s might not be the time where they're doing the super sad, endings where you're like, oh, now I'm like just depressed at the end, and
mhm,
they just want you to sit in that kind of a deal. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a very effective movie either way. But I could totally see having the question of like, should they have had more of a frank kind of stance on it? I think
mhm,
that's a good point to raise for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all very interesting. I think this is one that like every movie here is one that I'm like want to revisit because I think I could take a lot more from it, especially
Yeah,
now this one because this one also not necessarily one and the same of Red Shoes or Hamlet, but they really play with the structure in this thing, which is really interesting. I think Johnny Belinda is the most straightforward, whereas the other three films we've talked about so far, like Hamlet, rearranging the scenes, the flashback, opening with the ending is great. The Red Shoes, obviously, the transition between the ballet and then the real life stuff, and then here, quite literally jumping so far around her life. It's a little messy, but it's a good messy. Like I feel like it fits this film so well. Whereas like you could have just told this straightforward and had a really great central performance, but it's the editing and direction and writing that really just makes it feel like a work of art and not just like a really interesting message picture with a really great performance. Like it feels like it actually has artistic value that I think all five of these films do. So again, not going to tease anything for the future, but if this doesn't rank highly for me, it's only because the other four movies are so much better. Like this really is so good, even though I have criticisms. Like it really is fantastic.
yeah, I agree. I just wanted to add real quick, like the stuff that we learn about like her childhood and stuff, really, really, really depressing and tragic.
Yeah.
Just like it made me think about like the thoughts of like spending time with your family, and just like the thoughts of like how with her, like how she had the time with her dad, but then things didn't go how she expected, and then it's like you don't get that time back, and you don't get that relationship that you could have had, and how that affects the rest of your life. And I'm not sure if having a bad childhood is going to give you schizophrenia. I don't think that's how that works.
Right.
But
Which is another concept that I feel like could be misinterpreted if you get the
yeah,
wrong message from this. Yeah.
but how it doesn't help the outlook of your
Yeah.
condition, too, having like childhood trauma in addition to schizophrenia and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
maybe that's how you don't have good support system throughout your life, as if you can't build one, which is why I see like so many like parallels between this and Johnny Belinda as well.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. Snake Pit, though, we'll talk about it a little later, I'm sure. But nominated for 6 Oscars, wins one for sound recording, but is also nominated for picture, best director for Anatole Litvak, actress for Olivia de Havilland, writing, screenplay, and music, dramatic or comedy. But you know where you find lots of pits of snakes, Chad? You find lots of pits of snakes where Indiana Jones goes treasure hunting because he hates those snakes. But you know who else likes treasure hunting? Walter Houston and Humphrey Bogart in The Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
Oh,
Chad, tell
yeah.
us about The Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
The Treasure of the Sierra Mist. I mean, Madre. Maybe I might be thirsty. Directed by John Huston. Written by John Huston.
Oh
Cinematography
boy.
by Ted D. McCord. Music by Max Steiner. Starring Humphrey Bogart, Walter Houston, Tim Holt, Bruce Bennett, Barton McLean, Alfonso Bedoya, Arturo Soto Rangel, Emmanuel Dondi. Synopsis: a few men travel to the site of unexcavated gold to pursue massive wealth, but their adventure includes much danger and paranoia, which could be their downfall. Based on the 1927 novel The Treasure of the Sierra Madre by B. Traven.
Yes. So I know we kind of have talked about all these endings, like whether it's a happy ending or a sad ending. I hate to jump right to the ending here, but like this has got to be one of my favorite endings of all time. Because the whole movie is not at all what you expect. And if you hear this title, like Treasure of the Sierra Madre, I was thinking of like an Indiana Jones. I thought this was going to be like an adventure film. It's kind of marketed as such. You know, you got Humphrey Bogart in like the kind of Indiana Jones hat on the poster. But then you watch the movie and you realize it's much more like There Will Be Blood than it is Indiana Jones. You know, like it's much more about
Yeah.
greed and rivalry and this kind of festering paranoia, kind of like The Thing, almost like, oh my god, you could pull so many movies from this movie. But what I really love about the ending is that it's happy and sad. It's good because like the greed, they don't get their gold. So like, you know, it's kind of happy because it's like, okay, you shouldn't be so greedy, but also like you work so hard for the gold only for it to not be there anymore. But also like just the Walter Houston just cracking up and hysterically laughing about it. Like the irony of it. I just think that's one
Yeah.
of the best endings ever. And I hate to jump to the ending but first, but it's the last movie I watched, so it's the freshest in my brain. I literally finished it last
Mm.
night before we recorded. So I just like have that ending in my brain and it's just so fun. Just like what a hilarious way. Sadly like a bittersweet ending, but like such a hilarious way to end this movie that is anything but a real adventure. Like it really is so different than anything I thought it was. In a similar way to the Red Shoes, like it's just not what I expected. But I love that about this slate is like these movies. If you just read these titles, like Johnny Belinda, yeah, like you had no idea what that was going to be. Like The Snake Pit, The Treasure of Sierra Madre. They're such vague titles, but they make sense to the movies they are. But it's just so interesting when you go into a movie expecting like this, you know, kind of swashbuckling adventure treasure hunt movie, and you get something so different, and then ending it on that note is just so fun. But anyway, Chad, what are your thoughts on the movie? And not now that I skipped to the ending, but what are your thoughts on the Treasure of the Sierra Madre?
Yeah, I mean it's really good. It's like you said, like kind of different than what I was expecting because I hear about the Treasure of the Sierra Madre. It's like one of the great movies that people always talk about, and you know, you just know the name of it even if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But not knowing what it really was about, I always thought that it was like one of these big sweeping epics, like a Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh,
That's
okay.
like you said, like a big treasure hunt. Like they're gonna get a map, they're gonna go find the treasure, and it's just gonna be like this bit like really long. Like it's gonna be like 3 hours long. And they're going to find the treasure and stuff like that. I never thought about like Indiana Jones, but now that you say that, like I'm like, oh, I could see someone expecting like, you know, oh, you're going treasure hunting, you know, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
It's like an adventure kind of thing, which it is, but then it's really like it's not about the adventure really because it's not
Yeah.
about them finding it. Like they go to the play location and find the gold really early on, but it's
Yeah.
after that where it starts to get really interesting, and then you have like the differences of the characters come out and trying to figure out like what everybody's goal is, but then also like you know the mistrust of the people and the psychology of that. Like this
Yeah.
whole slate is very psychological.
Oh yeah.
Every single one of these movies has something to do with
Yeah.
psychology.
Well, and this is the one movie where I was like, well, this is the one that's not really you couldn't really call a horror film because like Hamlet definitely ghostly images, Johnny Belinda horrific rape sequence, The Red Shoes obviously about psychological trauma, Black Swan, Snake Pit obviously psychological trauma, mental illness. But the more I watched this one, I was like, this also does have a darkness though, and a
Yeah,
haunting nature. This was the most suspenseful of all five films. So I'm like, maybe it does belong in this. I think we picked the perfect slate for this month, is what
yeah,
I think. You know, like I really think all five of these work for the spooky season and setting the atmosphere of unease, you know?
yeah. I mean, I wasn't at all expecting Humphrey Bogart's character to turn into a villain.
Mm,
Basically, like he's like the main
yeah.
character. Like that's
Right. He's a big
the
star.
guy. Oh, I forgot. Can you click and I'll change my shirt?
Oh yeah, of course.
I had to I had to change midstream because I had the Wizard of Oz on there for the red shoes, and then I also brought down my Heisenberg shirt because
Mhm.
really like the greed of the of the Sierra Madre reminded me and my wife a lot of Breaking Bad because
Yeah.
it's like this guy that, not doing so great, and then he wants to aspire to get some wealth to get some assurance in his life.
Mhm.
But what that leads to is this like level of um greed that like leads you to mistrust everyone, and then also that means that people should mistrust you because you're the one that's bringing up these like bad vibes and negative, like what if they steal my money. It's like
Right.
maybe no one's thinking of stealing your money. Maybe there's just good people that you're with, and you're the one bringing up these negative vibes and toxic behavior and trying to manipulate people and stuff. um and I just saw that in Humphrey Bogart's character, where he is his own downfall, basically, of trying to get more and more money. And and then the other guy, not the older guy, but the other guy is the guy who wants to help the one guy's family, the guy who dies. He wants to help his family. And when I heard like that letter, because the one guy who shows up, they mistrust him immediately, and then he dies, and then in a big fight with like I guess like Mexican bandits.
Yeah.
And they find out that he was just kind of just a guy that was out there to same as them, trying to find some money.
Mhm.
And he had a wife and son back home, and it's just like the most heartbreaking letter that they would read, that it's like the wife is like, I wish you didn't have to go out on these trips, because the time away from you is so sad, it is so hard, because we have a little boy.
Yeah.
And just thinking about like if you don't strike gold here, this is going to be your last like kind of trip. And then it ends up being his last trip, but in a very dark, sad way. And just thinking about like him never returning back home to his wife and his little boy is just the saddest thing that I can ever think of, because I
Yeah.
have my own wife and little boy.
Yeah.
And the thought of not being here for them is just, I can't even think about it. So
Right.
I really, really reflected with that character. And to see like a couple of the guys, you being like, with this moral dilemma, they're like, let's give some of the money to them, because they're really going to need it. And then the one guy's like super greedy and just like, I don't know, kind of a deal, like that's, they put themselves in that situation, kind of a philosophy. And why should I care about anybody other than myself? So yeah, all of the psychology and the moral uh quandaries that the film brings up, I think, are really interesting. I love the sequence with the Mexican bandits with badges. We don't need no stinking badges.
Yeah.
um
It's cool to hear that line said aloud, because it's like that's a line that you hear so often as like one of the
yeah,
top 10, top 100 quotes, and then to hear it actually been said. Yeah, it's good.
yeah. And to see just how scary like the Mexican bandits end up being. Just like they're just come up and they're just like, hey, you want to trade with me? And they probably want to kill you.
Mhm.
um and it's just like the predatory nature of that. It's just really scary. It's just like there's a reason why people might not want to go find gold, because it ends up being super dangerous, and
Mhm.
then no one can trust each other around it. And it's like this whole like Gollum with his precious kind of thing. Is just like, I need that gold,
Yeah.
kind of a
Yeah,
deal.
it did feel very Gollum-esque. Like, it's so funny how many different movies you could find parallels for. Like, my first one was There Will Be Blood, just because, like,
Hmm.
it just showed, like, kind of this descent of man and greed and power hunger. And just also the fact that Humphrey Bogart, I read, like, a Letterboxd review where he gets darker every single scene, because there's more and more dirt on his face, and he's just kind of I don't know if that's some sort of visual like metaphor for him quite literally ascending to darkness, or descending to darkness, or if it's just like them filming outside with the fire and ash, and also with the dirt on the jungle to make it more gritty. But it is really haunting that by the end he almost looks unrecognizable visually too.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what There'll Be Blood reminds me of when you have that shot of Daniel Day-Lewis covered in the oil. Like that's what that kind of made me think of. But then also, yeah, you just had Breaking Bad. We've talked about so many other films. I mean, this is essentially, I think, more of a Western than an adventure film for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which is interesting because I haven't been the biggest fan of Westerns, especially on the show. But this it does feel like one of those movies that just because it's so rooted in character and tension and suspense, I'm locked in every second of it. And I really like that all the three main characters are so different. Like Humphrey Bogart is the most dark, the kind of one who's going mad. The other guy is just such a nice guy. He's
Yeah.
kind of the opposite. He has to be kind of plain and boring to where like we don't even know his name. We keep referring to him as the other guy. But then Walter Houston kind of being this older
Um,
prospector, kind of comedic fella. I know his actor name is Tim Holt, but I don't remember the character name. But the other
I'm
guy.
just bad with names.
Yes. But
Okay.
Walter Houston though, like kind of being not really comedic relief because he has a few comedic moments, like especially at the end that when he bursts out into laughter. But I do think like he is kind of the moral center in a way of that group, even though he is a little rougher and tougher. So he's kind of like the bridge between the two guys. But I like how it's such a different dynamic because it can lead to so many different inroads for conflict. And yeah, it really builds to an exciting climax. Like you don't think Humphrey Bogart's going to be the one to turn, let alone the first one to die. Like the other guy, Tim
Right,
Holt's character gets killed, and then you find out he didn't die. He was attempted, but he got up and ran
right.
away or whatever. But um, even that sequence where he leaves him for dead only to go to sleep. He's like, what if he wakes up? What if he actually didn't die? What if he just fell? And he did. He gets up, but he doesn't come back for revenge on him either. Like you might think this movie might go to. It's very interesting how Humphrey Bogart's character kind of has an unceremonious death in this thing. It is just kind of very brief. He's just killed by that band of are they also treasure hunters or they're just natives to the land? I don't know, but also then the unceremonious ending of like the gold just being gone at the end of the day. So like, was this even worth it? What is the point of it all? And I think that's the show that like, that quote I love is like, gold is not what's valuable. It's the work that takes to get the gold. That's why gold is so expensive. That's why gold is so worth it, is because of the labor it takes to get it. Like gold itself, it's just a rock. And I like that kind of sentiment. And that's kind of what this movie is. It's like, it's just a rock at the end of the day. It fades to dust, it goes away. It's really just about what it does to the human spirit
Yeah.
and the toll it takes to get it. And in this case, the toll's not worth it. But at the end, they still laugh it off and go off into the sunset. They go their separate ways. And Humphrey Bogart's the character that succumbs to the grief of it. I really think it's such a fascinating just character piece, which is not at all what I thought this movie was going to be. I thought this was
Yeah.
going to be kind of the popcorn entertainment kind of like, okay, these ones are heavy, but this is kind of the lighter adventure fare. And so when I ended with this, I was like, damn, this is the one that's making me feel the most. Kind of just deepest in my feels. So just really good across the board, and really cool that John Huston directed his dad to an Oscar. I still think that's the coolest thing
Yeah.
ever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of fun because you and I are both on like a similar page with like westerns and stuff, and it's just the idea of it's not like the western genre that pulls Dylan in
Right.
generally, but it's like the character driven like western ones because you
Yeah.
feel like the same way with
The
this as you
Oxbow
did with
incident.
the Oxbow incident. Yep,
This
you knew what I
reminded me
was
so much
gonna
of that. Yeah, like with this
bring
moral
up.
dilemma. Like, because they really don't span a lot of place either. It's kind of centralized in this one kind of camp. I
Yeah,
mean, there is like the journey to get there, but and you have like the prologue where he's working on the ship or whatever. But for the most part, it's pretty stationary. And then in a way that Oxbow incidents is, where it almost feels like a play in a way, which is ironic because Hamlet feels very cinematic for a play. It's just a really cool parallel. But
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, like you said, this one was another like very unexpected one. You love the performances and just the dynamic between all the people in it. Um, and Yeah, it just ends up being a very psychological movie. And I think like if you can add that into like a western and just like really have like a lot of good like tension and stuff, like they would have in like a gun duel or
Yeah.
standoff kind of a deal. I think that those can make for like some of the best movies. So um yeah, I really enjoyed this one. And yeah.
it almost feels like a standoff for 2 hours. It almost feels like one long standoff in a way without
Yeah.
weapons, And I mean there are weapons involved, but yeah, it's almost like a psychological standoff, which is just so fun. Like I love it. I really do. Yeah, there's that Heisenberg shirt. One more time for everyone. But yeah, Treasure of Sierra Madre up for 4 Oscars, wins 3 of them. Director, supporting actor for Walter Houston, director for John Huston, and then writing screenplay, and then doesn't win picture. So it wins writing, directing, but not picture, which is just crazy to me. Only because, not saying that the other films aren't great, but like just that you would think winning screenplay and director, you would also win. Like you have the best written movie and the best directed movie, but you don't have the best movie. So I just think that's very interesting sentiment. But hey, that's the Academy, and they also wanted to go with something that wasn't American this year, which again would rule out Treasure of Sierra Madre and Johnny Belinda, which were the kind of the two big juggernauts. We're gonna get to our ranking now, and then we will talk about whether or not this was an upset or not for us. And what we just think of the upset now, having talked about all the films. But Chad, this is so tough. This is so tough. I don't even have a piece of paper to write it on. Here we go. We'll grab my old itinerary.
I changed my ranking like twice
yeah
during this discussion.
Yeah, I think what I we'll wait till the ranking's over, and then I'll tell you what I thought might happen at the end of this episode once we're done with our acting prizes and stuff too. But we'll see. Chad, you gotta tell me now. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. What is your number 5?
I don't want to put any of these number 5.
I know none of these are number 5. Like these are all number 1, 2, or 3 on other slates.
Yeah,
it just happens to be that they're all good. Yeah.
And from the discussion, I had one that was number 5 that I moved up a couple spots.
Okay.
Actually,
a couple spots, plural. Okay.
That's how close a lot of these are.
Yeah.
And so I put it number 5, The Snake Pit.
All right, that's also what my number 5 is, but like it doesn't feel like a number 5. Like that's a number 3 on every other slate. Or what's your number 4?
And I still feel bad at putting this at number 4, but I put The Red Shoes at number 4.
Okay.
I think it has the potential to be a number 1, but from the discussion we had, like I was like, you know what? I don't know. I don't know if like the pacing of it, like I don't know. I got to rewatch that one.
After the discussion, I probably might have switched it, but I'm gonna just keep what I originally had written, and that is Hamlet at 4. Only because, yeah, I think it's great. Again, these movies are all really, really good. But I just, for some reason, I thought The Red Shoes was just a better cinematic achievement, whereas like there are some things with the adaptation of Hamlet that I'm like, oh, I do miss this. I miss this. It's a cool vision, but I still prefer. But again, that's only coming from someone who's read Hamlet and knows Hamlet well. But yeah, putting Shakespeare at 4 is kind of sacrilegious on the show. But
Right.
And then I have The Red Shoes at 3. I didn't mean to skip over your 3, but yeah, I put The Red Shoes at 3 just because I feel like also when I do rewatch that could be a number 2 or number 1. So I'm also giving that the benefit of the doubt as well. But what is your number 3?
I don't know if I made a mistake of putting The Red Shoes 4, but I will say I had Treasure of the Sierra Madre at 3.
Okay. I put Johnny Belinda at 2. What did you put at 2?
Hamlet.
Okay. Which means your number 1 is?
Johnny Belinda.
Which means my number 1 is The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Okay, that is not what I thought was going to happen on the show, but just because I feel like the one that's talked about the least is the one that won our picture prize, but it is the one that had the most nominations. Johnny Belinda is our winner. Slate. Wow, very cool because it's my number 2, number 1. Very, very cool. Yeah, that was my definitive. My number 1 and 2 are pretty set in stone. I knew I wanted Treasure at the top just because I loved it the most. It's the only one I gave 4.5 stars to as opposed to 4. But Johnny Belinda I really liked as well. Surprised me. But The Red Shoes I think has potential to raise. Hamlet has potential to raise. It's just not my favorite version of Hamlet. I want us to watch the Kenneth Branagh version because I think you'd like that one too. And then, Snake Pit at 5, like I still really like that movie. So it's just such a good slate. Like all these movies were at one point my number 1 and my number 5. Like there was a point where I'm like, I really just don't love the voiceovers in Hamlet, but no, it's Hamlet. I got to put it at number 1. And then Red Shoes, I'm like, this has got to be number 1. I'm like, oh, but I'm just really judging it off that one sequence. Like there was reasons for all these to be 1 and all of them to be 5. But
yeah.
Anything on your ranking, Chad?
Yeah,
Chad putting Shakespeare higher than me is just the craziest plot twist of all time, but I love it. I love it so much.
Well, going into Hamlet, I was like, I love the vibes of this. I think it's great. I think the performances are killer. And I was just like, maybe Hamlet will just end up being my number 1, which would be crazy, surprising, because normally I'm like the, sort of negative to mid on or think that they are mid, the Shakespeare stuff that we cover generally. Like I even like didn't really love the original West Side Story and
Mhm.
stuff. So it was just one of those things, but I love things that are Hamlet based, like The Lion King. So yeah, I think it's just like that specific one, but it also, makes me want to dive deeper into more Shakespeare stuff and really engage with that stuff. I think I could like the other things a lot more, too, especially with like Romeo and Juliet, knowing that it like had a lot of inspiration for the Twilight movies. And so
Yes. Yeah,
looking
absolutely.
at that is kind of funny. But yeah, putting Treasure of Sierra Madre not one and the Red Shoes not one, just like it all just feels so insane to me that like these are all kind of like number one movies in like a slate. And then
Yeah.
Johnny Belinda, I was watching and I was like, I turned to Carrie and I was like, how crazy would it be if in this slate Johnny Belinda's my number one? And then it just so happened that I got to the end of it and I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is my
And
number
it makes
one.
sense. It makes sense.
And for
Yeah.
you, that was Treasure of the Sierra Madre, and I totally get
Oh,
that
yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So, a bunch of movies fighting for like that number one spot, and yeah, I just think it's interesting how this all played out. So,
Very. We do have to give our acting prizes though. I will tell you what I predicted could be a first on Picture This will not be a first. Just because I'll just tell you right now, I thought going into this could be this is before we even watched the movies. I thought this could be the first time ever where each movie is represented with two actors, two actresses, and a movie. I thought we might go with like because just generally perceived critically, the Red Shoes is like generally the number one. So I was like, if we pick Red Shoes for picture, but then we go two actresses from two different movies and two actors from two other different movies, I thought there was potential where we could just, do five across the board. But I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think that's going to happen now, just
mm,
judging by what's going to go on. Maybe we'll see. We'll see. But I'm going to start things off with actor because I have actor first. And I'm going to go with the guy that I feel like just for me just showed the most range that I didn't expect. There are two performances that are going back and forth in my head, but the one that I think was just the most surprising was Humphrey Bogart in The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. I was just very surprised that he was able to kind of find the darkness where he's just kind of that guy that you think of as like a movie star. He's very hard boiled. He's very kind of down on his luck in a lot of films. He's kind of got this darker kind of aesthetic to him, but it's never like menacing. Whereas this film, I feel like it got to that point, like the Heisenberg kind of turn. So I really liked it. I liked how it wasn't this kind of just classic movie star performance. I like how it had range and really went to those depths. There were a lot of guys I could pick from in this slate, but this movie especially had two that I was really, really toying between. But Humphrey Bogart for me was just the most surprising. So I'm going to go Humphrey Bogart. I think it's probably the most interesting work of his that I've seen. I still think Casablanca is a little bit better, maybe, but I think this is definitely his most interesting performance for me.
yeah, no, that's a great pick. I got to be honest, I thought you were hands down just going to go with Olivier.
No, I
Um,
thought about it. He was my number
just a
two or three.
Shakespeare
It was
guy.
Humphrey, Olivier, and then one other guy toying around. But
So I'm thinking because I have two actors and Olivier is one of them,
uh,
and but I think we did give it to him for Lawrence of Arabia, right?
that was not him. That was Peter O'Toole.
Oh my God. Did we have a Lawrence Olivier? Why did I think that was Lawrence of
He was
Arabia?
he was
Duh.
yeah, Lawrence of Arabia. He was in Henry V, which we covered, and Rebecca, but we didn't pick him for either of them. Um, and he was
Shit.
in Great Expectations, which we also didn't pick. So he's never been picked on our show. But don't let that be the reason you picked
No,
him.
I know.
Because if that was the case, I would have picked him over Humphrey. But Humphrey, I don't care. We're putting him in the Hall of Fame because I think it's just the best performance. But go with your favorite performance.
Okay. I really want to give it to Laurence Olivier, but I think I'm gonna go with another one from like the movie that I put number one. I'm gonna go
Oh,
with actually Charles Bickford.
wow. Okay. All right. Not
I
what I thought you were
I
going to go
was
with, but very cool.
I was thinking about this like the whole time, and I was just like, just the arc that he has, and just like the feeling that he has, just kind of like, not uh, kind of just like she can't learn kind of a deal, and then like going to actually being you know uh somebody who is so supportive and just like that anger and that fire that he has as a dad, but also being so caring, when kind of being forced to. I almost picked Lou Ayres as well because I thought he was phenomenal.
I was gonna
But
say, yeah, I was wondering because you also gave him the award for what was it, All Quiet on the Western Front? So
okay.
yeah, I wasn't sure because he also that's a big pivot because All Quiet was not a silent film, but it was pretty dialogueless. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It feels weird not to give it to Lawrence, but then I'm just also kind of like, I mean, it is kind of like a standard like Hamlet performance. Like I don't know how
Yeah.
different it is from like Kenneth Branagh doing it and stuff, just delivering the to be or not to be. So yeah, I think Charles might actually give the deeper performance if I, thinking about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of just thought about that today. Like
Very cool. And
Charles
it's
Big.
cool because it's that movie has like 3 really great male performances. Like we talked about Lou Ayres. Also, the guy
Yeah.
who plays the rapist is really good in that role as well.
Oh yeah.
Very convincing.
Very.
But I like that you picked this role too because it's like it is a very sturdy role. You need like an actor like this to bring the weight to it because he admittedly goes through a lot of change as well in this film. So I think it's a really cool pick. I want to bring up my other guy that I was toying between, which is also Walter Houston. I just think he just brings such a great energy as a prospector in Treasure of the Sierra Madre. But for me, I think Humphrey Bogart was just a bit more of a standout. And then Olivier was also in my backups. But so many great male performances you could pick from. But now I think we have an even harder task because the female performances, I think, are even harder. I think there are legitimately 3 here that are like all-timers, and like one of them has to be left off. But I'm curious, Chad, who you're going to pick for Best Actress.
So I think there's one that has to be on there, but I think you might have said that you were gonna pick it, and I'm
Okay.
worried that you might not, even though. But I'm thinking about like leaving that one to you,
Okay.
and going with someone else that I think also should be recognized. And then, like you said, there's another one that's amazing that's not going to be recognized unless you end up picking her. But I'm gonna go. And I hate to do this because like, I'm gonna go with someone from the same movie.
That's
I'm
fine.
gonna go with Jane Wyman.
Yeah, the one
Um,
who actually won the Oscar. There you go.
oh, she did. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Because I actually didn't know that she won the Oscar.
Yeah.
You
It was
probably said it.
her and
And
Olivier. Olivier won and then she won for Best Actor and Actress.
sweet. Okay, because I was just sitting there thinking, I was like, there's one that I think maybe should have won. That I'm thinking if you picked that one. But this one I just think is just an incredible performance of, a deaf I don't Jane Wyman wasn't actually deaf, right? But
I'm not sure. Let me look. I
maybe.
don't think so.
But
Yeah.
the character was, and playing that, I just think she goes from just being not really thinking like thinking that she can learn and like be something other than like this deaf person that can't really do anything to being like a strong deaf woman that ends up defending her baby from like this man who she was at once helpless from him, and then she kills him.
Yeah.
So going from that to that, I just think she's just really incredible in showing that progression of that character, and all the emotions that goes into what someone like that is going through, and different aspects of having a support system and not, and
Yeah.
everything. So yeah, that performance really floored me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this was my number 2. So like I'm glad she's here. She would have been no matter what. This is a great performance also because it's like you're not using your voice. So like that
Yeah,
alone, just the fact that you're able, it's like the Troy Kotsur performance in Coda. It's like really great to see an actor who doesn't have the words to say anything, but says more than most of these actors combined, and I think that's like a really interesting parallel to like Laurence Olivier's performance that also wins that same night, where it's all in the words, it's all spoken, it's all this interpretation of the text, and then you have Jane Wyman who has no text to work with. I just think it's such a cool performance and a reason, very valid reason why she won the Oscar. She was my number 2 though. My number 1 was probably obvious from earlier. It's Olivia de Havilland for The Snake Pit.
yeah,
I just loved her performance. I honestly think I probably would have awarded her the win for that, though I do think she is just incredible. So is Jane Wyman. I mean, these were my number 1 and 2. I do want to give out a shout out to Moira Shearer for The
yeah.
Red Shoes.
That was the number
She's
3.
really incredible. And she sells a lot of the movie, what works and what doesn't work about that movie. She works incredibly well in that movie. But I do think Olivia de Havilland, though, she has the toughest job, I think, of any of these actors
Yeah,
in terms of what she has to take on emotionally, physically. It's a very tour de force performance. It's a very heavy performance. And I think even Jane Wyman, you know, she still has a simplicity to her and a blissfulness that, like, Olivia de Havilland, it always feels like she's an 11 out of 10, but it's never overbearing either. It's not like Sean Penn and Mystic River for me, where I'm like, okay, like this is like one of those cases where like, and no hate on Sean Penn, I'll probably get my award for next year as well for supporting actor. We'll talk about that
Probably.
someday, maybe. But I do think like she's just tackling so much and does it all so well. And again, this isn't even my favorite performance of hers because we still have a movie from 1938 that I can't wait to show Chad because he's never seen, that she's in, that I think is just, I've described it as the most heavenly a person has ever acted on stage, on screen, in a classic movie. I just think her performance in one of these movies is just so just amazing. Mwah. But this is just such a different performance. It's so dark, it's so nuanced, and I think it's easily my pick. So I'm very happy. We represented 3 films. We didn't represent Hamlet or The Red Shoes here, but we've talked about them. They're great. All these movies are great. So we're not going to have that picture this first of a different film for everything. But I thought if there was a world where we went Olivier and then the 2 actresses from Snake Pit, for Snake Pit, Johnny Belinda, and then we went Humphrey Bogart, and then Red Shoes for picture, that was how we would have gotten it. But once we started talking about the Red Shoes, I was like, okay, I don't think Chad's going to have it high enough to give it the picture prize. So we're probably going to get 2 or 3 for Johnny Belinda, which we did. But let's recap really quick just so you can see it all visualized, because I've just been spewing mumbo jumbo. Our best picture is Johnny Belinda, with our best actors, mine being Humphrey Bogart for The Treasure of Sierra Madre, Chad's being Charles Bickford for Johnny Belinda, my best actress, Olivia de Havilland for The Snake Pit, and Chad's best actress is Jane Wyman for Johnny Belinda. So Johnny Belinda gets 3. Humphrey Bogart joins our Hall of Fame, which is really cool because he was there for Casablanca. He's there now for Treasure of Sierra Madre. He's officially in there. The other 3, I don't think we've ever awarded. And Olivia de Havilland, I will tell you, will be in our Hall of Fame someday, but we'll have to wait till we get there. But that's it for 1948, Chad. Any last thoughts? We can talk about the upset. Obviously, Hamlet being an upset because it was a British film upsetting 2 American films. Johnny Belinda losing 11 Oscars was kind of shocking. Treasure of Sierra Madre winning director and writing and still losing picture. I mean, it was a very crazy night. You know, the fact that Hamlet beat a film that had 12 nominations and a film that won writing and directing. But any thoughts on the upset? Obviously, we're not upset about it because we both like Hamlet, but any thoughts in general on the slate?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of these things, like we said, this is just a really great slate. So, we both had different picks. We didn't even agree on what was the number one necessarily. Even though a lot of these are our number ones, and we could easily see, this is a slate where we could easily see each one of these movies being someone's number one. And so to see the Academy, what do you call it? Circle around another one that we didn't put number one, we can also see why someone put it as number one, because it is kind of like an auteur kind of like, project from Laurence Olivier, one of the great actor director, guys.
Yeah, the Tony Awards in England are literally named after him. They're the Olivier Awards. Like if you win the Olivier, that's the highest acting prize you can win in England. So there's something to be said about that,
That's awesome. And so to see Hamlet win, not surprising, not really upsetting, because even though there's so many great movies in that slate, Hamlet is also a great movie. And I really enjoyed it as being a Shakespeare newbie, as I'm referred to. And it's one of those where we also opened the show talking about how it opened doors for a lot of other movies to be considered for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. So while it might be a technical upset, it's not really that upsetting personally, and it's also kind of a cool thing that it won, so that we can open the door for more international stuff. So
which I want to say, and I'm going to go back through them real quick, I think for the first time in this series is the first time where we're not really upset with the winner. We're not like, oh, that didn't make sense. Like, I'm going to go through them real quick, but
it might be. But I will say, watch Johnny Belinda, please. Because you've heard of Treasure of Sierra Madre, but I don't think many people have heard of Johnny Belinda, and it's sad that it got kind of shoved under the rug, because it is like a coda. It is like I don't know, if you don't like coda, then maybe that's not a great recommendation. But even if you don't like coda, you might love Johnny Belinda, because I think it does a lot of things differently that coda doesn't do. But it's just a brilliant movie. Please watch it.
Okay, I was wrong. 76, we agreed Rocky was great. It was our best picture and it won the prize. But
Mhm.
that is the only one so far to win our prize to be an upset. But all the other movies like Crash, we didn't
Yeah.
think it should have won. Braveheart, American in Paris, The Greatest Show on Earth, Spotlight, Around the World in 80 Days. None of those films were ones that we were like, yeah. So
Even though Spotlight is a very controversial one, because I know a
yeah.
lot of people who would
Well,
disagree with us.
and the thing is, we did like it, but it just we were like, no, it's either Mad Max or it's Room. But I
Yeah,
do think it's interesting that this is like the first. This and Rocky are the only two that we've been like, no, it makes sense. Like that, we're not upset by it. It's a worthy
yeah.
winner. Even though we didn't award Hamlet our prize, but I just think it's really interesting, and we'll have to see because we are continuing this trend next month. Sorry about that. Oh, with the year of the upset, we're looking at a big upset between two titans. A movie musical that won over a 3.5 hour long epic. I know you've missed those, Chad, so we're gonna get back into those big epics. When Dr. Zhivago lost
Mm.
to The Sound of Music, and I am so excited for this year to talk about 1966. Those movies are Darling, Dr. Zhivago, Ship of Fools, The Sound of Music, and A Thousand Clowns. I have not heard of Darling or Ship of Fools or A Thousand Clowns. I've only heard of the two big ones that we talk about with this year, Dr. Zhivago and The Sound of Music. But I'm so excited because we talked about The King and I last month. And we're excited because I was like, oh, we don't have any more Rodgers and Hammerstein movies coming up. And I'm like, wait, no, we do. Sound of Music, duh. And it won Best Picture. So I'm excited. We also haven't talked about Julie Andrews musicals yet on this show because we haven't covered Mary Poppins yet either. So it'll be really fun to talk about, Chad. But any last thoughts, Chad, before we head into 1966?
Very excited for this one. I don't have like a necessarily like, rooted opinion on Sound of Music. Like I think I like it, but like I don't feel strongly about it. I know some
Mhm.
people who don't like it, some people who love it. So I'm very interested to get to that, and a lot of these other ones that I haven't really heard of.
Yeah.
But just hearing like Ship of Fools and A Thousand Clowns, I feel like these days, like with like the new age generation, like those are kind of like terms for like dum dums. So it's kind of like the dum dum slate, like
Yeah. Well,
Ship
then
of
you have
Fools.
Darling, which is a tremendous
Wow.
endearment. But
Great, darling. Yep, that's
um,
right.
very interesting. Yeah, like I have no idea what these movies are even about. I might just go in completely blind on those three. And I've
I
never seen Doctor Zhivago, so that'll be a first time watch.
I will say, if you watch House of a Thousand Corpses, there's not actually 1,000 corpses, so there better be 1,000 clowns in this.
Oh yeah, we better count. Yeah, I better not even 999. There better be 1,000 clowns. If not, it's number 5 on my ranking. I'm gonna clip this back if it ends up being my number 5 on the ranking. But that is gonna be 1966. Chad, where can they find you out there for 19 or not for 1948 for Chad? Sorry,
Cool. For always.
for always.
So for always, you can check me out. I mean, other aspects of this channel. Sometimes, and then check out Cinema Chad is my channel that I review stuff, rank stuff, do a lot of fun stuff over there. Have some fun shows and talk about like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and other physical media with my wife. And just trying to do all that. Check out Welcome to Primetime, which is my horror channel, where my wife and my buddy Hunter, we talk about horror movies, sometimes Buffy, and just a lot of stuff like that. A lot of fun over there. And then, yeah, I mean, I think that's about it. Just check out like Letterbox and
Yeah.
other, I'm around, places.
Very cool. And you can find me here. You can find me on my letterbox. All this stuff is down below for you. So thank you so much. This is going to be airing on the 25th because Chad, the 25th is also your pick for my 31 days of Halloween. So Chad will tell us on my TikTok and on the Facebook page what movie I'll be watching. I'm not going to tell anyone here because you might be watching this first. But Chad is getting the choice for the 25th. So this is going to air the day Chad is making his pick. So we could also cross promote, which is also fun. So thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned. Watch the 31 days of Halloween. I've been TikToking. As I'm recording this, I have a cold, so I actually took a few days off of recording TikTok. So I'm going to kind of compile a bunch of them and release them all at once as soon as I can. But I have been watching movies. I've been having a great time. Also introducing my girlfriend to some new ones as well that she's never seen, which is really, really fun, including Scream, which we're going to be watching tomorrow on the 14th. Sorry, I spoiled Ingrid's choice, but by now you've already seen what you picked. But I'm really, really excited We watched Friday the 13th for the first time the other night, and she and I were both kind of like, this is crazy, but like fun and whatever. That was the one my dad picked. But I'm having a really great time with 31 Days of Halloween this year, and seeing all the great movies that I haven't seen that my friends and family are picking, which has been really, really exciting. But yep, scream, there it is. But have a great rest of your spooky season. Thank you for joining us here. Join us next month for 1966. It's also Thanksgiving, so a perfect time to sit back with a 3-hour epic of Dr. Zhivago or Sound of Music for sure. But thank you guys so much, and we'll see you all next time on Picture This.
And the winner, Hamlet, J. Arthur Rank, 2 cities film.